please, just to say who, Gillian, who you are, where you're from, and we'll just to remind everybody, since it's way before Christmas that we last met.
Good morning, everyone. Gillian here, Corporate Director for Wellbeing at BCP Council. Sorry, almost reverted to a previous role.
I'm Andrew Villani. I'm Director of Housing and Community Safety for Dorset Council.
Hello everyone, I'm Jim McMahon. I chair a Digital Public Engagement Group.
I'm Kirsty Hillier. I'm Deputy Director of Communications, Engagement and Safety. Morning everyone, Head of Safety. I work with Health and Innovation. My 6th year is the AHC.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona King. I'm here to take minutes today.
Sarah Longden, Public Health Dorset.
I'm the Head of Corporate Government.
Celia Buffin, ICP Chair.
Good morning, everybody. David Freeman, Acting Chief of the ICP.
Morning, everyone. I'm Leslie Haig. I'm Vice Chancellor at ACC University College. I'm here representing the Higher Education Partners.
Morning, I'm Rebecca Davis. I'm here from the Local Enterprise Partnership.
Councillor David Brown. I'm the portfolio holder for Public Wellbeing at DCP Council, and I'm the chair of the Wellbeing Board as chair of the Council.
Good morning, I'm Ian Gould, chair of the ICS Public Engagement Group.
David Clay-Smith, Joint Chair of Dorset County Hospital and Dorset Healthcare.
Morning, everybody. Sam Crowe, Director of Public Health.
Hello everyone, James Sompa. I'm the Cabinet Member of Dorset Council for Adult Social Health and Housing and the Chairman of the Health and Wellbeing Board at Dorset Council.
Good morning everybody, Matt Prosser, Chief Executive, Dorset Council.
Super. And
Debbie Simmons, Chief Engineer for Ferry.
Debbie Simmons, superb. Now online we have, okay, can I go Zoe Bradley?
Zoe Bradley, here's my role of interim chair of the BCSA, and my day job is assistant vice chief executive BCP.
Thank you. Ian Girling.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ian Girling. I'm chief executive of Dorset Chamber.
Forbes.
Yeah, good morning, Forbes Watson, GP Chair of the Dorset General Practice Alliance, and I'm here in place of Simone Yule.
Thank you, Forbes. Nick.
Yeah, morning everyone. Nick Johnson. I'm Joint Chief Strategy Officer for Dorset County Hospital and Dorset Healthcare, here for Matthew Bryant.
Louise.
Good morning, I'm Louise Bate. I'm the manager at Healthwatch Dorset.
Rebecca Knox.
Hi, I'm Councillor Rebecca Knox and I'm Chairman of the Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Authority.
Ben.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Ben Ansell, I'm Chief Fire Officer for Dorset and Wiltshire.
And I can see Neil has joined us as well. Neil.
Good morning, Neil Bacon. I'm the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer at the ICB.
Wonderful. Is there anyone else online that I can't see? No, that's super. Excellent. Well, that's a good. Now, we also have a member of, well, a so-called member of the public. We have Jess Beale with us, who is a Community Engagement Manager at Dorset Art. So welcome to you, Jess. Thank you. And then if we move to the apologies, we've got Nicola Bent, but we have Heather, who's requesting her. We have Matthew, but we've got Nick for Matthew. Jenny Douglas Todd is going to be joining us from 11. Graham Ferrant, but is represented here by Gillian. Spencer Flower, Paul Johnson, Patricia Miller, Amanda Pearson, Andrew Rosser, David Sidwick, Simone Yule, but Forbes is here for Simone, Rob Whiteman and Siobhan Harry. So Siobhan will be here at 11 as well. Okie doke, that's superb. So that's great. Any declarations of interest in the agenda items today that we need to note for the minutes?
Cecilia, I suppose I should say that on the creative health item that I'm introducing, I'm also a trustee of the National Centre for Creative Health. I come here in my role as NHS chair.
Thank you. Okay, that's useful to know. Thank you. So if the next thing is to have a quick look through the minutes of our last meeting.
Cecilia, can I just interject? I'm just here observing this morning. I won't be here for the whole meeting. It's Rhiannon Beaumont-Wood, one of the non-executive directors from the ICB.
Welcome, Rhiannon. Just going to join us. I just couldn't see you on the screen, so welcome for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the screen that I can't see? No. So, minutes of the last meeting. They were circulated with the papers for the pack. Is there anyone have any comments, corrections, edits for those minutes?
I was here for the first 5 minutes, but I had to leave for an emergency. No, actually, I wasn't really here for the meeting.
Okay, we can note that. Thank you.
Chair, David Brown was present, but he's not been listed, so I will update the minutes to reflect that.
You probably had the wrong David then.
Quite possibly.
Thank you. Yes, of course. Any further notes on the minutes? Okay, and can we accept the minutes of the last meeting then? Yeah, thank you. Actions, I think, were all completed. If I look through the actions, the one outstanding action that we had related to the branding, I'm pleased to say from conversations with Kirsty, I understand that that has now been resolved. So we now have a fully accepted brand that we're going to be using for the ICS branding countywide. So thank you for that. And just up front, I will say that in the minutes, we did ask for partners to identify resources to join some of the work streams. And as far as I'm aware, we haven't had volunteers coming forward for that work. So it is something to consider as we look through the actions in the activities in this community. We've got a load of great stuff that we're going to see today. Lots of great work going on in the place. But how do we actually turn those plans, those ideas, those transformational things that we can see into actual action? How do we put some resources behind them? They're not going to happen on their own. So as we're looking at these things, let's look at it from a lens of, are there resources in our teams that we can put to do this work? Because if there's not, then perhaps some of the things we should try, we should say we're not going to try and do them and maybe focus our efforts on a fewer things, because at the moment, lots of ideas are coming forward. I'm really impressed with the work that I'm seeing, but it's how to make it into. So with that said, we have a packed agenda, and I'm going to try and keep people to time, which will mean perhaps that you won't all get questions in that you want to ask of the presenters. Each presenter has offered or will offer, because they'll be asked to, take questions afterwards, emails, conversations, if there's something else that you need to understand, because there's a lot going on and I'd like to get through what we've got today. So the first item on our agenda is Rebecca, so if you want to load your presentation. Yeah. We've talked many times about the labour market in Dorset. We've talked about low wage economy. We've talked about lack of opportunities in Dorset, and I think what I've asked Rebecca to do is to show the data that the LEP collects that shows what the actuality is of our data in Dorset and how that compares to national trends. So if you can speak for about 10 minutes or so and then take questions, thank you, Rebecca.
No problem, let's give this a go. Okay, so hopefully you've seen some of the information that I've provided in the paper today. My presentation just adds to that, basically. Except it's let's try again. Let's try share. That's better. Okay. So So economically, I'm sure you've all been aware that we've been under a bit of pressure lately. We've had high inflation. We haven't had a particularly growing economy, but the labour market has been even under more pressure. So since before COVID, we've seen record numbers of vacancies. Some of that due to the fact that we've also exited the EU from the way, but also our global workforce nationally has changed. I'm not going to go through all the figures here, but I've put that information in should anybody want to have a look afterwards. So employer response to this is the fact that we have been, we found that higher wage and higher, more senior jobs are actually satisfied more quickly than those in that mid to low skilled piece. We're finding that permanent hires equally quite strong, but very much the sector around fixed term contracts or non-permanent or short-term working, casual working is quite different to pre-COVID. And nationally, we have seen over the last year, so this was the year to September, jobs and the labour market nationally has evened out rather. You can see the that's a 10-year graph on that top piece there for vacancies, and the national picture is that that has dropped slightly from its post-COVID highs where we saw absolute record numbers across the country. The big V is 2020, March 2020, when all recruitment pretty much for a time after that. Jobs, you'll see just tipped off the edge there, is just beginning to dip down from the highs at the bottom. But in Dorset, that isn't the picture here. Those lines on that graph, they start with 2020 at the bottom, 2021, 2022, and then 2023 is the blue shaded piece where we've seen an average of 9,500 jobs per month for the entire period of 2023. And although jobs were up 16% nationally between September 22 and September 23, in Dorset, that's 49% up. So we're still seeing record highs here. We haven't yet experienced the dip. Our December figures will be out mid-February. It'll be interesting to see how we've done over this last quarter, but I would say from what I'm seeing, it's still really strong in Dorset. So looking at our employment or our population, our working population, about 353, although I think that's actually up slightly to about 360,000 people in our current workforce here. But it was actually 16,500 up in the year 2023 to September, and only just under 9,500 that are unemployed in the whole of Dorset. So that's really low figures, so 2.6% in Dorset as a whole. BCP sees that as slightly lower and Dorset Council area slightly higher. The disproportionate piece for us locally is actually our young people. Our young people are between 16 and 24 would be around the 3.7% unemployed. Unemployment figures are to March 23. They update slightly later, so we will see some changes in the next figures that we do in February. The piece that has been part of a conversation for a while is that nationally there is this group of people who are economically inactive, and that's defined as somebody between the age of 16 and 67 who is able to work but choosing not to. And nationally, you can see these graphs here where that picture is actually a growing number of people. These are over 10 years. No, they're not. They're from 2020. So you can see that it's a fairly lumpy ride, but it is still a growing piece, even though it came down over a while. And then you see the split there in the types of reasons as to why people are currently choosing not to work. A student choosing to look after home or caring responsibilities for young children or older relatives. And then there is also a proportion of people that have that are not working due to short-term or long-term sick reasons. And then there is a proportion that have likely retired early. Within Dorset, we have seen that figure plummet over the last year. And that's quite interesting because for quite a long time, we had nearly 100,000 people in that category, 99,600 choosing not to work. And so we've, over the last year, there's been quite a lot of work with the job centres and employers that call to come back to work and to be working for your community. There's also been the stress of higher bills, higher utility bills in particular, and that need to have a greater income or a more resilient income. So it is positive that we've seen a drive of a number of people back into the workplace, but we still have the round graph there. The yellow and paler blue sections are actually the people that are currently working due to short or long-term health issues. But you can see nationally we are below the picture there, and I think it's often thought that Dorset is a county where people retire too early and that we would be higher than the national average, but it's not the case. So we are doing well to bring those people back into the workforce. I thought I would share this one because it really does show the level of the height of requirement for the human health activities, as the stock codes call it. But in 2023, we had 6,725 jobs. And the next one down that you can see there is about food and beverage services, so hospitality, and 3,500. So the level of requirement for healthcare related workers is really, it peaks everything else really. And I think you can see on that list towards, does it split out care? Yeah, residential care activities is number 4 on that list. So you add the two together in terms of the number of roles that are within this health business across Dorset is huge, and it is something we need to work together on to help people into that industry, into the sector. This one is full of information, but the piece I wanted to focus on is actually about the fact it's in that bottom box, and it talks about low to mid-skilled workers. So 49% of our vacancies in Dorset are low to mid-skilled workers. So these could be entry-level jobs. They could be jobs that people choose to do throughout their time because that's what they are good at. So caring responsibilities in particular, I think, see as that. But they are jobs that won't have enough salary to attract people to relocate to this area because they're just not able to. The housing costs, the living costs in Dorset just push that challenge. The other 51% of the jobs, yes, are at that higher salary level. And yes, we do see turnover and recruitment within that sector. But this is a stubborn group of mid to low skilled workers and aligned to mid to low skilled pay. These are the charts that we look at all the time. We publish these every quarter about what the top skills are. And this comes from vacancies. So it's really interesting to see, again, these are stubborn skills at the top, and particularly the digital skills at Microsoft Office. And we are really trying with the colleges and with other providers to make sure that we are providing those skills and also helping employers how to advertise. So where you might be saying, I need Excel, actually is the ability to cope with data, to manage data, to use a spreadsheet. Actually, does that not put somebody off? It's thinking about those ways to find those people that you need. And then I've listed a range of options here that I'm aware of that are really current and live at the moment in terms of opportunities for healthcare, that's NHS, that's care sector, as other public bodies to get involved with. And in fact, it doesn't just have to be healthcare, but the colleges and higher education are there and they are supporting, they are flexible to curriculum, to delivery, particularly we have a large adult education budget within Dorset, and we are able, through the colleges and the skills and learning facility, to take that up. We need to spend it. We don't need to waste it. The Dorset LEP operates a Dorset Skills Board, where we come together to look at strategy of skills across the county. And we also have the chamber, and it's good to see Ian here this morning, who are delivering the local skills improvement plan. And that's looking very much at level 3 education. So it's kind of that technical education, an FE just into higher education piece, and making sure that the colleges in particular, that their curriculums align to the workforce that we need here. Then underneath that, there are some skills boot camps, there are apprenticeships, there's a careers hub that we run that works with all 84 schools in Dorset. There's a digital skills hub over in Boscombe, and there is the UK Social Prosperity Fund that's going to focus on skills from April this year. And in terms of retainment, DWP have their midlife MOT option that they've recently launched. Now, all of these things are available, and I'd be very happy to talk to anybody who has teams or leads who would like to have a conversation about accessing these different things. Most of these are flexible and they will work to an employer. So it's not just for health, but for every sector. And I'd be really keen to help signpost and help deliver and help the workers that we have here into roles, but also to make us more attractive in terms of jobs here for others moving into the county. And I think that's it. That's all about Dorset LEP and where you can find more of this information as and when we post it. We normally update our insights every quarter.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was really a good run through, but really clear. Fantastic. That was excellent. And it is interesting to see that 49%, as you say, of low skill, mid to low skilled work, which we can't recruit into the county because of the reasons that we all know of the affordability of living here. How are we going to address that, given the number of those roles that are clearly going to be in health, social care, well-being? So, anyone have any questions for Rebecca? Yes, Ian.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wonder, can I comment on the word choose? Because you've grouped together people for whom it isn't a choice. If you're sick and you're unable to work, if you're an unpaid carer, particularly later in life, then you are unable to work. For me, choice is about deciding to be a parent at home while the other person works work, or having sufficient income and so on. So wouldn't it be sensible to take out of that data those who are unable to work rather than a choice of?
Yeah, possibly. So there is an element that some of those people that are in those categories that you've just talked about would like to work, and more flexible working or different career opportunities or different working patterns, or the support within the workplace with like access to health, which is a DWP scheme that will help work with the business to support that person into work. So yes, I agree, choice is probably the wrong word, but it's not everything that those people are unable to work. They're unable to work because they've been unable to find the right role, or because they don't wish to work. So it's a mixture. So it's a hard, I need to come up with a better word than choice, but I get where you're coming from.
Thank you. I've got Ian Girling.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just a couple of kind of points on that. Thanks, Rebecca. And obviously we've talked through lots of these issues as well. Certainly when I speak to employers across all sectors, recruitment and retention of staff is probably the #1 issue that they're facing. So where we're seeing so many fewer people in the workforce than a high number of vacancies, it's almost an employee's marketplace in terms of where they want to go to work. And unless employers snatch people up quite quickly, people just disappear. And there's a real need for employers to successfully recruit, to do everything they can to be really good employers. It's not just about the salary, it's about the terms and conditions, etc., etc. I think also there's clearly a link, Cecilia, there to the need for really good careers advice, attracting younger people so they really understand what industries in care are about. So perhaps it's worth having a really good look at that in terms of what's going on. And just finally, it's obviously National Apprenticeship Week in a couple of weeks on the 5th of March. Sorry, the 5th of February. So maybe there's an opportunity for a really big push on apprenticeship opportunities in the care sector. We'll be running the Dorset Apprenticeship Awards, and I have to say we always get a really good number of people from the care sector applying. So perhaps, and from health. So perhaps we could do more in terms of promoting those vacancies and those opportunities for younger people. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Yes, that would be good. John.
Just a question. Do you have data on the outflow of young people from the county?
Not specifically. So at 18, there are around 49% of our young people that will go to study elsewhere. I haven't seen the exact figure of the number of those that return. So it wouldn't be a fair thing to say, because some of those return annually and work in local businesses over the summer period. Some may choose to stay away from the age of 18. But yeah, so the only figure I have is that 49% will leave the county to go to higher education.
Zoe?
Hi, yeah, just a couple of things. One thing is sort of really an observation about the uplift, obviously, in minimum wage, living wage. And I know, I mean, Citizen Advice, we're one of the organisations that's struggling with this a bit, because it's the, and I went to a seminar with Alice Jones just before Christmas, and it was interesting. It was Bovington Tank Museum that actually brought this one up, that the living wage, and because of the high percentage that's going up now, it's the next level up. So actually, from a salary point of view, it's not just uplifting people that were on that, it's actually having a knock-on effect. So actually, businesses and organisations are having to look at how the mix of their employment goes, and actually what those salary costs are from an employer's point of view. The other thing is that a lot of people we get through Citizen Advice are that they are on low salaries, however, you know, with children and caring and all sorts of other things, that they still are not, the awareness isn't there that they can actually claim benefits as well. And we've had some huge results in the last sort of 12 months of people saying, I can't afford to work. Well, you can afford to work because you will still get this. So I think, you know, banding that about a lot is a quite more, and also coming back to the employers, and because of other issues like with children and that sort of thing, and childcare, I know there's money gone into that, you know, recently, and for the 2-year-olds, but it's that flexibility again. And I know Ian and the Chamber have done a lot of work on this in the past to actually to talk to employers and say, you know, if you want this and you can't recruit, what else have you got? Like Ian says, it's not always about the salary, it's about the flexibility of the lives that people are leading. And we've found that, and we've introduced a very flexible approach now, whereas if it's people with children, you know, they can work between school hours and, you know, manage the holidays and things like that. So I think it is a broader issue, and there's a lot of quick wins here if we all work together on it, and just get the information out there, because people, they don't know what they don't know, basically.
Thank you, Zoe. I think that's a good point. How do we work together? That is exactly why we're here in a partnership meeting. What more can we all be doing? And it sounds like things are happening, but there could be more. Leslie, last question.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's just a comment really. And so thank you, because this is absolutely key data. And we're constantly in the education side, obviously trying to think upstream. You know, it takes a while to get things planned and through. But I guess it's, you know, what I've seen is a strengthening between the FE colleges and HE. Because FE's obviously got the mechanisms often to get people in at the level that you're talking about. Often we've got the skill set to deliver some of the health background. So I think that coming together is actually only going to be positive. But through the skills board, I hope that we can just map out what the next 3 to 5 years needs to look like, because we're constantly having to think. HP's in a lot of turmoil. So I think anything that helps any of us plan, we can help support what's going on. But it's just that this data is absolutely key. And it's obviously we work really closely with our NHS colleagues all the time, in real time, but perhaps not so much with colleagues from other sectors in the same level of accessibility. So I think through the skills board, hopefully we can.
I just wanted to come back on the figure that I said about 49% leaving. We also attract 30,000 students to the universities and colleges here in Dorset. So whilst there is a people going, there's also people coming. But yeah, the other thing besides Dorset Skills Board, in terms of that's a great strategic body to look at how we deliver this. One of the practical ways that we are bringing people together is through this digital skills hub that's funded by BCP Sounds Fund. And we're actually bringing the services together. So we have Citizens Advice come on Tuesday with the Job Centre, with the National Career Service, with the family support available from the council and others to look at, right, let's do a whole person thing. So rather than travelling to the Job Centre and then, oh, I've got to go and find where National Career Service is, we're bringing them all together and we're having some real success in terms of helping people understand that picture of what does work look like with a family or with caring responsibilities or with some different skills. So yeah.
I mean, this is a topic that I sense that lots of people have some input to. So can I suggest that if you're interested in a further session, that we do a virtual session somewhere in the next few months, just to bring people up to speed as to what else could be going on and what else is available to people. So we're all aware of these things and where the gaps might be that we're not already feeding. So thank you very much, Rebecca. That was brilliant. I think it has brought us, a lot of issues. As you said, it's a key point for us. Shows that there are lots of opportunities, lots of vacancies, the level at which they're at, that we need to work harder perhaps to get people into those roles. And there are other issues that we need to be talking around those as well. So thank you very much. You're very welcome. I'm going to move us on now to our next item on the agenda, which is housing and health, and progress on joint strategies and initiatives. So Andrew, is Andrew on that too?
So, Chair, if I can first, there's a number of us in the room. So myself and Andrew Billany, who's Corporate Director for Housing from Dorset Council, Gillian Kay from Bournemouth Crescent, St Paul, and Ben, I think, is also on the call joining us from BCP. And you've got a paper here presented from Andrew and Kelly Ansell, who have similar roles in the two local authorities. And I think that the issue for us is that housing is a priority both for the ICB, but it's also a priority for local government. And access, as we know, to good quality housing is a key determinant of a wider good public health. And the paper sets out the role of the roundtable that's been going on for, I think it's about 12 months, but it's been it's challenging as ever to get everybody across the public sector system together in one space at one time, but we've worked hard to do that. What we've sought to do is to focus on perhaps key worker housing, because ultimately we across the public sector system need workers to support the people that we deliver services to in our communities. So I think that's one of the reasons for that focus. There's a common need for housing and accommodation, but the two local authorities might have different ways of delivering that in terms of the type of need that's required in terms of our communities. And I think it's helpful if we set that out. But I'm going to hand over to Gillian to see if there's anything from BCP perspective, and then Andrew and Ben are around to update the committee.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Chair. Yeah, all I wanted to say is that, housing and health are such interconnected issues, and I think they are issues that we will return to at this board on a regular basis, and I think we should. But I think what's quite powerful about this piece of work, and I say that having still being very new to the role and having not been involved in it at all, is that it's focusing on some really tangible deliverables. It's taken a specific issue, it's quite focused, and I think we will be able to come back to the board with some progress and some deeper understanding and some solutions, I hope. And I'm really looking forward to joining my first of the roundtables this week as we take that work forward. And Ben is on the call, as Matt said, to come and take on further issues around BCP Council.
And thank you. I mean, I just maybe a plug on some of the progress on a few things. And Cecilia will know one of them is that Vinita from the left and myself and a few others are looking to hold a seminar 29th of February. I think it's a working date. 27th February. Thank you.
29th of February this year, but it's not.
27th of February, just to run explore thoughts, thinking, experiences from across the economy, not just around our own experience. I think whilst we try not to get mission creep on this subject, it's very evident that it's been referred to in the last presentation that the link between having affordable, adequate housing and being able to hold a job down or get a job, retain it, stay and bring up your families, etc., is a common factor across the economy. So that'll be an interesting and useful event, I think, and it's part of that intelligence gathering as a sector and as an integrated care partnership about how we bring that back to help us provide good joined up solutions in this area. As Gillian said, and I think it's we do recognise that there's a fair degree of work needs to be done around intelligence gathering and data gathering on identifying what the what the issue is, what the specific solutions are, because they could just as much be a workforce pay and retention solution as provide somebody with a house or a flat. So I think we're keen to take that time to get it right. So we've got sort of intelligent decisions around that link. So and I'm saying that partly from and it's something in common with Kelly Ansell, my colleague in ICP. We want a little bit of caution around expectations of what it is, what you can get delivered through a local authority housing housing functions, because we are faced with quite significant demand across the piece, and some of that is very much in the other parts of our work around this table is around come from hospital, supported housing needs, healthy homes, etc. So as Gillian said, it's good to be able to get this focus on key workers, but I think we want to make sure we've got the focus right so that we can get some decent outcomes.
And Chair, finally, a plug. Carefully buried within the update to the committee is it is anticipated that provided partners are able to commit financially to commissioning proposals.
Good news is that, yes.
That'll be a focus of the housing round table conversation on Thursday, where we're seeking to get some commitments, because as Andrew has said, both Andrew and Kelly have got demanding roles within their current day jobs, and we don't want this to be on the edge of the table. We want to be firmly in the centre, and therefore there's a little bit of upfront money required in order to pull that data into a usable form. So that'll be a request that's gone through the housing round table. I just wanted to highlight that, so I didn't miss anybody's attention.
It's highlighted on my pages. Thank you, Matt. I can see Ben. Did you want to come in, Ben?
Yeah, I think thank you. I'm head of strategic housing at BCP. So I think this is a really useful opportunity to broaden our understanding of local housing need. We have an understanding relating to health inequalities and affordability, but this does give us a much broader opportunity to link some of that understanding, improve our data, particularly around how we can improve housing options for people in employment and education pathways. And I'm not sure that previously we've had opportunity to make those really important connections.
Thank you. And Ben Ansell?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Chair, for having two Bens on the call. Just from me, I just want to speak very, very briefly. I'm a member of this roundtable, and I just think it's an example of how this this group of people work very, very well together. For me, there are two very important focuses. Yes, one is around key workers, which is important to many of us as employers and being made to provide the services we need to. But for me, the more important strategic benefit is actually overall health of our people within our communities, and we know, don't we, and apologies I can't be with you today, but we know that the challenges that we face and the people who end up using our services either regularly or on an occasional basis, often a lot of this is based on health, which can be linked back to housing. So I just want to pay thanks to everyone who's part of this, and please can we keep up this momentum. I'm afraid, Matt, I haven't got my checkbook with me today, but I know that we do need to get into those spaces as well, because we need to make sure that we deliver on this. Thank you, Chair.
We know where you live, Ben.
Thank you. And I think it's always great when someone references their checkbook in these conversations as well. So thank you for that. I mean, I'm always delighted to hear tangible deliveries, solutions. I do recognise we need to manage expectations But I mean, we have a big issue here that we've been talking about for some time. We do need to get to a point where we know when we're going to be able to provide those homes, those affordable that people need. And I think we have the opportunity not just to work with local authorities, as we know we have the opportunity to work with the private sector and beyond, in order to be able to help deliver some of this with new ways of working, new business models, new finance. And I see those, institutional investment opportunities on the list for investigation. And I think we can't just keep trying to do things the way we've always done them. We've got to look at new ways of doing it. And that's the bit that I see, which is so encouraging.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just partly around the financing and talking about the institutional investment opportunity that I sit on Dorset Pension Fund, yes. Which needs to be quarter here. And certainly there are conversations going on there about using £3.8 billion in the Dorset Pension Fund and looking at investment in affordable homes. I think in its early stages, I think Cornwall's pension fund has had some success in moving that way and actually shifting some of their investment into affordable housing. And it's very attractive to institutional investors and pension funds because it's a regular income stream which matches with their sort of liabilities for actually paying out pensions to people. So it's actually one of those areas that's definitely worth moving forward and exploring.
Thank you for that. And yes, I've heard similar about Cornwall making some good progress there. Long-term patient finance with good returns is good.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I feel like it's a bit of a deja vu, really, because I got quite involved with some of the BCP Future Places discussions around placemaking and a broader perspective around, I guess, about healthy, not just housing, obviously housing stock and all the discussions that went on, but actually how we get the places right for people, because actually I think one could actually, defeat the other if it's not. So I guess it's sort of what happened to all of that massive data, massive roundtables, massive things that went on. Will that is that still current enough to be able to feed forward into this exercise? Because obviously there's an awful lot of effort and work went into it. But you'd be saying to obviously not have that.
Yes, I mean, I from my perspective, I know Vanita's seen all of that data. That data is all available to us and will be the core. It needs a little bit of updating, and it needs to be our new focus. And as I say, other ways of looking at housing need, whether it is about pay and affordability as much as about bricks and mortar. But you're right, there has been a
community. It was very community.
Just one thing I probably would like to broaden out a bit, because I think there is not a silver bullet solution. So I think about making sure we're getting the work we're doing is making sure we're covering all bases, because the existing stock, I think private landlords, housing associations, that making best use of existing housing within our area is also key. So certainly there's lots of focus thoughts around how we get new build or new institutional investment. That's very, very strong. To make sure we cover that also by how we talk to existing landlords. And there has been whilst it hasn't helped us on the homelessness side, the change in local housing allowance rules just make it that bit more affordable for people at the bottom end of the income bracket. So there are some strategic choices we can make around engaging with the private landlord market, making sure we've got that smart as well. So big picture, new development, yes, but also some of that day-to-day. How do we make sure we're engaging well with existing housing suppliers?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Matt, I remember a few meetings ago you shared with us what I thought was an eye-watering figure of the number of houses or applications that have been granted, but building hasn't yet started. And in amongst that, there'll be lots of affordable homes. So has that eased? And in what way will that affect the building of those particular homes you're talking about here?
So the number I shared was 11,500 houses which have been granted planning permission in the Dorset Council area. There'll be a similar figure, I think, from memory from BCP, that have not yet been built out. I mean, I think the reason those haven't been built will be variously market economics. At the end of the day, you don't want to build more houses than the market can supposedly sustain. But of course, when you're dealing with the market side of it, you're ignoring the affordability. I think one of the challenges will be for us to look at other solutions to that as to how we get affordable houses brought forward at a quicker pace. But Andrew, I don't know if there's anything you can add.
No, apart from that, it's a national. Those figures are replicated around the country. I think there's lots of national debates about how to speed planning process. we could take up time now doing, but it's one of the challenges about getting new houses built rather than banked as land banked.
If there is something that we could be doing as a system, you know, if there is some pressure that we could be bringing to bear because that is causing us the issue, then you know, this group should be able to surface those so that we can, as a system, maybe take that higher. So somebody else.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment that I'm encouraged locally by the development that's actually taking place around a Lodmore estate. And I've worked in the housing association industry little while ago, and the developer is in fact someone that has got interests across Dorset and Hampshire, Avebury, working with Lovell, and it's encouraging to see that they are actually turning over earth, building, facing the consequence of bringing in infrastructure and all of the risks that the developers have. But I go by seeing it that it's actually taking place, and it's encouraging to see that it is obviously going to be pitched towards people as affordable housing.
I would ask another question. Obviously, one often hears of, even when planning permission is being requested or has been asked for, that there are local petitions against new developments. And I know that's a very political statement to make, but the opportunity for us to actually, as a system, to highlight need to local people, to put some context around the decisions that get made, or often the the perception of need. I think the data that we're going to collect should actually also give us the basis to be able to go out and say, define that need more clearly to people who might otherwise suggest that we're building over Hardy's landscape, for example. An opportunity perhaps to make a case. I can see political colleagues, want to distance themselves from that, but it's where we are at the moment is in a situation where if we do nothing, if we do no further development, we will continue to have an aging population who will have a need for care, have a need for affordable housing themselves at some point in time, and we can't supply it. There is that mismatch must be dealt with somehow, through the data that we hopefully will collect and the case that we'll be able to make. I've got Jane and then Ian. Jane.
Yes, I think a great deal of concern around building of homes is not the building of homes themselves. It's around the pressures on the infrastructure around them. And I suppose what we often see are pockets of development, and then an additional pocket of development, an additional one. So you get this cumulative impact, but you don't get the infrastructure and services that are required to support those who are moving into the home, because of the nature in which the applications come on. Now, I don't want to get into the detail. It's a huge topic, and as you said, it can be controversial, but I think that is part of the issues that I hear from residents around it's the lack of support and lack of services to support the growing numbers of people that are moving into areas, be that towns, villages. We know issues around transport are challenging. So it's very complex. It's very complicated. It'll be similar, different. I don't you don't have the transport issue so much in BCP, but Dorset Council is an enormously wide rural area. So there are these challenges, and I think that that people in the health area are where the requirement is, and education as well in some schooling, but particularly on GPs, dentists. We know all these things, and that's where the concern is from people that I hear on the ground. Or just as I said, you could have a whole
We could, but I think this is the opportunity for us to set that scene out and try and remove those barriers before we get there, because otherwise we will have a great plan for housing and we're still not able to deliver because we haven't got that story right. So, I mean, we've got Kirsty here with us to help us with engagement. And I think that perhaps this is something that we should be engaging on early, because we're going to have to make some changes.
Yeah, just to add slightly from the political angle, but I think it is incumbent on those of us that are elected and even the councils and council leadership to actually make the case for the need for the housing and the need for affordable and key worker housing, and constantly make that case even to those opposing it. And I've done that in my own ward. Just in my ward, I've got 3 major housing developments of nearly 2,000 houses going up as we speak. And with the 3 ward councillors, I was the one that supported the first one, 400 houses. Got a lot of personal abuse, abusive emails, social media criticism because I'd supported it. But now it's built out. When I knocked on the doors during the election, I knocked on somebody's door. He was a head teacher at a primary school in Poole and told me that it was a discounted starter home. That was the only way he could get on the housing ladder, and he was a head teacher. And so many situations like that when I knocked on the doors around that area that just made me think it was worth the battle. I'm sure I lost votes, I got a lot of abuse, but I think it is incumbent on us to actually keep making the case.
And as a system, we have said that housing is a major issue. We've all talked about the need. We've all talked about it as being not only for the health of our populations, but to actually get the workers that we need in to actually deliver healthcare. So I think as a system, it's incumbent on us to continue and to use your case examples and build on those perhaps and learn from them in a way that helps us make that story in our communities. Because otherwise, we'll end up with another programme that gets cancelled because we haven't been able to make the progress.
There's loads of case studies out there who've been completely changed from pastoral because the housing provision has been made. So,
Just 2 very quick pragmatic points, because it's just complicated, but I think it's even more underlines the need why we need to work together. So a few years ago, there was a situation where some of the independent healthcare providers were approaching councils and petitioning for individual requests under community infrastructure levy funding, particularly in relation to planned housing developments. And we brokered a single agreement across the system. So now all of the planners work together and we approach those requests from health in the round. So it's all on the table and it's all visible. I think also don't forget the opportunities around the consultation process for the 2 local plans in the local authority, and better engagement with health from a strategic planning perspective around what do we know about the future supply, if you like, of healthcare provision, and balancing that against the plans around additional housing. Really, really important. But I think that's only really started in earnest in the last couple of years. So we need to keep up that momentum. It's been a big step.
Thank you. That sounds absolutely pivotal. Yes, absolutely.
Can I just finish off? It's obvious that I've declared a local interest in Weymouth and Portland as a place. But one of the things, to Sam's point, was the collaboration that took place within the framework of a neighbourhood plan, which declared all of the pockets of land that was available to us and gave pros and cons as to why the suitability was worthy of pursuing. And we were all consulted towards the end of the year. We were consulted to actually contribute to whether or not the plan was a reasonable one and could be supported. And it's to that end that transparency is all about. Is what it's all about. It's asking the person how we can help.
Making sure that as a system we are speaking with one voice about the importance of actually making. So any further questions on housing? I think it sounds like we're making good progress. The next roundtable is Friday.
Thursday.
Sorry, hopefully you know I was coming late.
Yes, I did indeed.
Can I just add one thing, if I may? The important bit for me in the paper was the fact that you've actually set up a joint project with dedicated resources, because otherwise we can all talk about this, can't we? And we can all agree that it's really important, but unless we dedicate those resources, we can work together, we're not going to get there. So I just wanted to commend Matt and team for doing that.
Thank you. I think that's been a theme that we've been trying to press. Is actually no, you're right on message. I think that's perfect. It reinforces the need to put people behind these programs. they look great if we're not resourcing them. And Matt has highlighted the fact that he's also put an ask in there for some funds, but we know Ben has his checkbook about him, so we're looking good. Okay, any more questions on housing? Anything else that you guys want to raise? No,
Thank you, that's been helpful.
Thank you. And the conference that we are organising is the 27th of February. So invites will be going out to making sure that everybody who wishes to attend can join that session. Okay, so we can move on to our next session, social mobility. This is a topic that we discussed very quickly at the end of our last meeting. We didn't have a lot of time. We had the presentation from Anne-Marie Sim from the Southwest Social Mobility Commission. And I think what we learned on that day is there is a fair bit of work to be done on social mobility across the county. We wanted, and we discussed the opportunity to work with the Purpose Coalition, who Patricia introduced to us as an opportunity to develop an impact plan for policing. But unfortunately, at this stage, there isn't funding to do that. So we're looking at other ways that we might want to take that work forward. And certainly, I've asked the LEP whether they will pay for a seat at the table for the Southwest Social Mobility Commission to include Dorset, which was Dorset and BCP, into this next year's report. So we get the data that we've seen sort of roughly what it looks like, because some of it is Dorset, but this will include data, Dorset this year. But now I think the opportunity that I've discussed with David is the opportunity to really, how do we take this work forward? There are lots of people who are working in this area. There are lots of people who are interested in joining this work in this area. As we heard from Rebecca this morning, our careers team are already working on some of these actions. And I've had a number of conversations with other individuals across the county who tell me of programs that used to run in this space, who used to do some of the connectivity of some of the education, and a multitude of programs that they've talked about for young people to amplify and support the work that's already been done by local authorities, and specifically, for children and young people. But again, for example, I spoke yesterday with Hannah Cook, who she's the partnership manager for Young Enterprise, and she again reminded me of a number of initiatives that had happened in the past before COVID, where people were coming together with the LEPs, with the careers team, and looking at higher education that we could expand on if we wanted to put some focused effort behind that. But as Jenny's just highlighted, as others have pointed to, in order to make this happen, we do need to have some central resource, or some people volunteering resources from their teams in order to get engaged. Now, the LEP can put some resource in from a careers hub perspective. Young Enterprise will put some resource in terms of their a local lead in order to work on this. There's a possibility of working perhaps with the Chamber in the work that they're doing, and I see Ian's on the screen. There's the opportunity again to work across the place on those. It's how do we take an initiative like this forward for our children and young people? I don't know if David, you'd had any.
Yeah, well, so that's really helpful context setting, Cecilia, and I so kind of minded as to whether we open a broader conversation, then bring it back to this. So what this is highlighting is that if we are wanting to get stuck into the work that's within our purview around tackling inequalities, improving outcomes, and all the rest of it, this is the sort of stuff we have to pay attention to. But where does it fit in our order of priority and urgency? And what's the level of commitment that we can all put in terms of resource, and be that people or money resource, to try and make some of this work? So put some flesh on the bones. When we received the presentation from Anne-Marie at the last meeting, she highlighted, and it was Southwest to be fair, but as Cecilia said, that within that some Dorset numbers did emerge. We have
very, very low social mobility across the southwest, with very high rates of unskilled work, poor education outcomes, and low opportunities to progress within occupations. What we said, that really struck us, actually. We did sort of think, well, it came at the end of the meeting and we wanted to spend a bit more time on it. At the same time, in parallel-ish, sort of, we had this contact we were building with the Purpose Coalition, which is a national body led by Justin Greening, the former Secretary of State for Education. I don't know if it's described itself as this, but effectively it's a community interest company that's trying to drive social mobility up and down the country. It's linked with a lot of organisations, and they offer capacity, resource in order to help systems and areas build insight, identify gaps, and start to build strategies and plans, and will help systems and work alongside systems to build and deliver those plans and adapt those plans as they start through delivery. That proposal came in to the ICB at the end of October, beginning of November, at a cost of £42,000, including VAT. And on the face of it, that sounds like great value. That's £42,000 on a £1 billion budget is not a lot. But unfortunately, and this is the reality of the situation, it came at a time when the NHS budgets fell into freefall. And around November, we did the numbers for our system, and we found ourselves in a massive deficit position. And I know that's not unique to the NHS in Dorset or to the ICB or NHS partners. I know a lot of us are struggling with costs and rising costs at the moment, and costs of care in our case. So suddenly the £42,000 may as well have been £1 million, because we entered into a very strict financial controls, a thing we call in triple lock in NHS circles, which means that in order to get spend approved, we have to get clearance from our regulators as well as our internal partners as well. So suddenly £42,000. So whereas the ICB had a real ambition and passion to ignite this work and get it going on behalf of the system, we can no longer do that in quite the same way. And the reason for broadening it and shrinking it is that is actually the same for everything else we've got, not everything else, but a number of things we've got on the agenda today, is that the only way we're going to get this moving is if we all chip in together. And I did a kind of rough calculation that £42,000 divided by, it depends on who holds a budget, but 6 or 7 organisations comes in about £7,000-8,000 each. And that suddenly is a lot different, isn't it? It's a bit different. But it's not just about the money, because if we agree that this is a priority and we want to get behind it, it means we have to put people against it as well. So organisations contribute, let's say £7,000 plus one person might get this going. I don't know. That was just kind of, I was trying to think, what's the reality? How do you turn a knotty issue like this into a reality? And the next item on the agenda, by the way, is about how we turn our strategy into action. So there might be some reflection here and then hold it to the end of the meeting. So the one thing I had in mind, which is coming right back to Cecilia's point, which is, you know, there are different parts of our system and showing real interest in this, different assets and skills and insights we can bring to it. So if there is an appetite for it, if we believe that it's worth getting into the detail of this to help enable us to do some of the other work we want to do around skills, education, employment, well-being, social mobility, then would there be value in us setting up a task and finish group type approach? You get some interested partners together to really meet 2 or 3 times to work this through and figure out what it is we can do with the assets and resources we've got, and do that as the plan, or build a proposal for what a plan could be. So that was just kind of, we knew we were going to have the struggle with getting this item, you know, getting people to come in and talk to this item, and we didn't really have a position on it. So we didn't invite them back. We thought we ought to have the conversation first, given the context that I've just set out.
Yes, oh, absolutely. I think that is very helpful, and a good summary of where we've got to and the opportunity. I think we have people who want to take this forward. I think we know that there is a need if we can further it up. who knows, at the end of this financial year, next financial year might be easier for people to actually put something in place. So if we use this time well in terms of creating, getting the willing, what I guess is who would take that task and finish it, and who would lead that work. And as you say, if we've got a session coming up on strategy into action, maybe we could look at it in that context. But anyone, any thoughts on how this might work? But Sam looking like he's thinking. David wants to come in.
David, thank you for that. You know, we started off with of course, we do need resources to make things happen. And, you know, when I come to talk about creative health, one of the things I should be saying is, of course, if we haven't got people to help it happen, it won't happen. And I think we might say this for every item virtually on the agenda and sort of bring our hands to that and go, well, that's really difficult, isn't it? But and I wonder if part of the responsibility of this group is to describe how we're going to make the developments we need to make going forward, because they're not all big ticket, NHS hat on, all big ticket items. There are quite a lot of small areas like the one, David, you describe here, and I would like to think probably around creative health as well, which are going to be really important to develop the way we offer health and care to our population, rather than just keep improving the same model. And other than sort of goodwill and squeezing, we're going to run out of that, and we're going to get frustrated, I think, that we can't move things forward. So I don't know, this is not meant to be an unhelpful circle, but whether, I don't know, Jenny, whether there's a conversation to be had at least with our colleagues in the NHS saying that we want a small fund for developments, but they won't be big developments. They're going to be a whole series of very important, you know, community-based activities that kind of add up to you know, the improvements that we've all been talking about. Matt referred to the impact of housing on health and any number of other areas that will be there through. So, David, sorry, that isn't a great help to your particular question here, but I think it is something that so we don't keep having a sort of Groundhog Day coming back to the same thing, that we might think about how we do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a good challenge, isn't it? And for me, there've been a couple of points in the discussions today where I was thinking a project or a program approach isn't going to work, but how do we provide some leadership to encourage the system to understand how it could work better? And there must be enough ways where, for example, in the fascinating conversation about the labour market, economically inactive, DWP have schemes that are trying to get people with long-term conditions back into the workplace. What's the role of our GP colleagues in highlighting, signposting, supporting, getting people into the right space? And for me, it's more about, do we understand what we're doing together as a system? Is there a clear purpose? And do we understand the sort of assets that are already in business as usual that could be slightly nudged in that direction? So I think that's the conversation, really.
Yeah, it's not more of the same, actually. So, I mean, I was totally with you, David, when you were talking, but I was thinking, by the time we get to this agenda, everybody's going to be saying exactly the same thing. So what's key for me is, what is the role of the ICP? Because I don't think the role of the ICP is about solving all of the issues, actually. I think it is about highlighting some of the issues. I think it's about galvanising part. I think it's about galvanising communities. And so there's something for me about us thinking quite literally about what is the role of the ICP. Where are the things where the weight of the ICP together comes in, where we have to work together to achieve that? And I would say one of those things is housing, because we know it's critical. Interesting, I was listening to something on Radio 4 on the way in this morning, and they were talking about the reason social housing was created in the first place was because of healthcare needs. And we seem to have moved so far from that. So for me, that's a real clear thing. It's something as an ICP that we can get back to. And so beyond the things that we have to do together, how then do we either nudge community thinking, behaviour, resources, or something else? And so maybe that's where the work of the ICP comes in terms of actually framing what those things are and the different places for them.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So, no,
I didn't
no.
mean to be unhelpful, but that's,
No,
but that's
no.
what's taken my
I
mind.
think we have to look differently. We roll. You know, there's got to be a way that we can square this. And as you know, I like the idea of squeezing it a little bit further. But it really, you know, we know that everybody is working up to here at the moment. John.
Yeah, I think the thing that really makes my brain kind of sparkle with this idea is the fact that this is one of the things which gives us the thread right the way across and right the way through and all the way between. And whilst it may not be something where you can say, well, here is a big deliverable or here is a big system program we're going to do, what it does allow us to do is to all step into a space that's much more engaged and much more connected with one another. And I think there's very few things that we've talked about that have that absolutely kind of broad picture about what we understand about our society and our relationships and our communities. I haven't heard of anything at the ICP or meetings that has had that quality about it. You know, even when we're looking at housing or we're looking at jobs and things like that, those are part of this conversation, clearly. So I think this is something maybe just to kind of hold on to and see if we can crack this as a means for us to structure our dialogue and also make decisions about priorities. So in a supply challenged environment, perhaps this gives us some of the things which allow us then to make a decision about this rather than that, and to offer up our, you know, as it is, a health inequalities or an inequalities agenda as a foundation for our decision making, and also to the fourth, you know, objective of the ICS. You know, the economic impact and community and sustainability and things like that being part of this agenda too. So I really welcome this as an opportunity.
You know, I think you're right, Jenny. We are not an executive. We don't drive an executive. We don't drive a team directly ourselves. We try and surface the issues for other partners to be able to pick up and work on. And I think that has been our role. But this is one, as you say, that crosses a lot of the themes that everybody's interested in. I like Sam's thinking around the fact that we have individuals who actually are themselves, you know, looking for that social mobility, because this with building that social mobility and building. I think there are opportunities that when I listen to how the Young Enterprise works with their groups and the work that I, you know, see with some of the charities and some of the groups who work with young people, how they are doing ground up work. So, you know, amplifying that. It's always great to have a plan and have the data, and I think we're going to need to have that anyway. So let's grab the data through the commission that's already doing it. Perhaps, you know, see if there is a bigger plan that we can overlay over the piece, but without stopping the ground up sort of hearts and minds that you're talking about, and possibly engaging with those other groups. It is a knotty issue. I have someone on the screen who wants to come in. I can't. Hello, Siobhan.
Hello, apologies. I just was saying hello in the chat.
We're talking about social mobility. We're talking about what we can do about social mobility in our place, and how we as partners can come together to actually make something happen. And it's the challenge, David.
So there's two parts for me. So one, I totally agree around the role of this committee, this group, is to you know, identify and make and sort of guide things to happen. We also hold the strategy, the shared strategy for the system. So we've identified where we want to spend our time and effort, which is around early health prevention, thriving communities, and working better together. And so the two parts of the question for me: one is, do we consider this an important enabler and/or priority for that strategy? Part two, it might actually be a fairly quick win. I know it's a phrase that people don't like, but I use it as tech. So because it engages a broader spectrum of partners and not just the usual health and local authority partners, it needs quite a few others. There might actually be more capacity and scope to get into this than some of the others. So it kind of enables us to do some work whereby if we want to do creative health, health partners can't throw everything into creative health and this, but actually this is about education, it's about the LEP, it's about chambers of commerce, it's about voluntary sector, it's about communities. Maybe there's a way to unlock some of the benefits of this and the ways of working that enables us to get into the strategy larger. So tactically, it might be strategic. I don't know if I've got my thoughts right there, but I was just pondering that as a kind of, if we feel this is important, then I think we can do something about it.
I think you have got your thoughts right on it, because I think, as John was saying earlier as well, it is the core thing that it affects us all. We can all see it. It fits absolutely with early help. It certainly fits with prevention, and it certainly fits, again, helping with thriving communities. I mean, you can't have thriving communities if you have workless families and long-term worklessness with low aspiration and areas of deprivation, which will continue. So and there are enough people willing to volunteer their time to do stuff. What they need is that coordinating central piece that actually helps pull it together and says, this is what what needs to happen. It's the same with most of the work that anyone does in a charity. From my experience working in a charitable organisation, if you've got your program manager, your volunteer manager, you can pull in volunteers left, right and centre. You haven't got that person, nothing happens. It's that pivotal central programme driving, who is going to just be making sure that everybody knows where they've got to be, when they've got to be, and who needs to talk to who. I mean, it's a different way of working to the NHS. It comes back to something we did at the workshop, for the ICP workshop, and we stood in front of those whiteboards and we were saying, how would you address this? And we had NHS colleagues talking about committees and plans and data, and we had voluntary sector people saying, well, let's go out and have a go at something. And it was quite that, can we actually use this as an opportunity to try that, let's go out and have a go at something approach, which actually possibly fits better with the sorts of, I mean, I don't wish, does that sound?
Absolutely. I think it is, as Dave said, about the kind of diversity of approaches and resource. And I think, we're hearing that there are lots of pockets of work that would align really closely with it in all sorts of places. I mean, the work that's done on the Research Engagement Network, for instance, as a kind of, community transformation about how we design services. There's all sorts of amazing things that would fit with this. And again, it's about having that central point to kind of give people sight of that and occasionally bring us together to do something more than we would just choose to do on our own.
So,
I'm hoping you're going to volunteer.
So this is and I've tried to enable and generate some thoughts, if not quite full conversation on this. This is a subject really close to my heart. I am one of these people. I've come from a very, very deprived background. My father was an alcoholic. My mum had learning disabilities, and we had a broken family. And here I am. So this work really matters to me. So I want to volunteer as me. I'm happy to try and bring a bit of leadership to this and a bit of steer. It's not the NHS Dorset. Unless anybody's got burning passion that competes with that.
I'm wrestle now.
Well, it's just that, I sit a lot in this role as acting chief exec as well. There's a lot of time spent in a lot of meetings talking about money and performance and A&E targets, and all those things really matter. It's important we provide quality services, but what really drives me is making a difference to our communities. Early help, thriving communities, working better together. That is my mantra. That's where I come from. That's where I want to spend my time. And it's hard to spend my time there as NHS Dorset, but it's not hard to spend my time there as me. So I'm offering me as a starting point to try and get a conversation going, to start the Task and Finish group, with colleagues' help, we'll reach out and say, who do you think could be involved? Who do you think can help? And then let's build something around this and see where we go with it. Would that work?
Definitely. I'll volunteer me as well, but not as join you.
So David, I think that there is a connection with creative health there, but I'd be very happy to join you in that.
Not claim anything like that. I've got a far too nice a life. But I think there is something, I mean, a lot of the time I spend going between meetings, just leaving. And I'm sure lots of people in the room do. I know John, you know, I've lots of faces here that I've seen in lots of places. So I think identifying those community assets is something I don't feel is sort of centralised. And I've been here in Dublin 5 years, and I still haven't got a hand on my room. There is something about there are things that can be unlocked. We can't constantly look to the voluntary sector, and actually don't really need it. Lots of things going on, lots of people to support. I think it is just having a framework that we understand. We shift the ship towards here for a bit, or we shift the ship towards there for a bit, because there is lots, but it feels like at the moment it's a scattergun, and I think that's probably well. I mean, I'm very happy to support too, but you know, saying things, but I'm really not sure we've got a handle on community health. We tend to put it all into one place, and actually a lot of that's gone voluntary. Lost. So I think there are key people across the system who are kind of going, okay, well, actually you speak to that person, this person, let's make it happen quickly, and it probably could.
Yeah.
But I think there's no one place for that to come together. So I guess that could be a
start.
Yeah.
And I think it's that framework that I was getting to. I think we need something because there are going to be lots of issues like this where we can't just take up and say, okay, we're going to do it.
No,
it's not going to happen. But actually, we do need a framework where we can put it into and make sure that things are happening.
Determining the priorities, I think, is something different.
Yeah.
See, that's where I think that could.
Yeah.
That would be really welcome, I think, too. Because you can't do everything for everyone all the time. But there are clear needs.
I just say, I think with knotty problems, for me, I use that quality improvement methodology where you've got your overall aim, which is really clear. It's about improving social mobility for our local populations, and there were lots of primary drivers that we've heard about today, and then there were loads of change ideas, and I wonder if that might be a really helpful way of tackling this knotty problem. Is we're all really clear about what the aim is, but how do you map it? And then you tackle the change ideas one at a time, or you harness that energy within the communities to do that. And the other thing is to co-design it. So whoever said get your young people alongside, so who are the people, like you were, David, you know, what are the key things that would make a difference, and have we got enough of those in our change ideas, and then who kind of owns it? So
yeah, we can bring those. Gillian, did you want to come in? Thank you.
Actually, a really similar point, kind of reflecting on all of this. I thought the social mobility presentation we had was really powerful, and it was a real shame not to have Dorset included into it, and an important kind of underpin. But it's an issue a bit like tackling health inequalities, where every decision that all of our organisations take has the potential to either help or hinder. And we almost need a framework around our decision making that means that we are doing that mindfully, rather than it being about a separate programme of work that needs to be established in parallel to everything else that we're already doing. It's about how we do things. I think David's offer to bring himself to the table and show some leadership is brilliant, and I'm sure you get lots of others who'll be willing to contribute in that way. I say this as someone who massively benefited from young enterprise in my earlier life, and learned a lot from it. Although still became a civil servant and then a public servant. Different kind of.
Given looking at the time, and I promised to try and keep us to time, and we are a little bit over, but I think that was a really very helpful discussion, and I think it's given us a path forward. Thank you, David. We can work together, as you said, create that framework, create that way of working. I think I'm thinking. I'm thinking, yes, absolutely. We will. We've now got a 10-minute break. So can I just ask people if we can make it a 10-minute break, which I you, everybody. Thank you for coming back.
You're not expecting.
Well, I
Right, you were the first half, brilliant.
Yeah. As I was just saying, my granddaughter asked me what I did, and I said, I'm a chairman. And she said, what's that? And my daughter said, it's like a referee. And then she asked me, do I have a whistle? And I've just realised I probably do need to have one.
It would be handy.
Okay, this next item on the agenda, partnership working strategy into action. Failed a little bit by David. Looking at how we're actually going to make some progress with our strategies. And with us, I can see Neil and I can see Ash on the screen as well, which is great. And Sam. So I'll leave you, Sam, or Neil to take it away.
Shall I start?
I think.
So I'm really pleased to be taking this paper today because you've probably heard me talk a lot about strategy, culture, we've done lots of change theory, but it's not been that specific. So we've had conversations earlier on today about the challenge of resourcing what look like big work programs and work plans. And that was my feeling around the ICP strategy. It was turning into a work plan that we would struggle to serve. So instead of coming and giving you a report that says, actually, we've slowed down a little bit, what I thought I'd do was to turn up and model the type of behaviour that I think the ICP should be there to encourage among all of the leaders in our system. So this is firmly in the prevention and early help category. And I've brought a paper on smoking today for probably 2 or 3 reasons. The first is, if you're aware of the parliamentary timetable, there's going to be legislation laid before Parliament, which will debate whether we raise the age of sale for tobacco. There are also a number of other measures in that bill, which would see some of the tightening up of how vapes in particular are marketed to children and young people. If it passes, there'll be more money coming to local systems for stop smoking services. So that would be really welcome. I think it's going to be worth about 800,000 for Dorset as a whole. But I think it's been a long time since I've been here and actually talked about one of the most important public health measures in this country. And even though we've made fantastic progress on smoking, it is still the most important modifiable risk factor for many of these long-term conditions. So if you look at the work that Neil and Ash are doing and the team to populate the outcomes in the NHS Joint Forward Plan, smoking directly impacts on 2 of those. So it's a huge contributor to the gap in healthy life expectancy, which features in 2 of the outcomes. But it also has an impact on the aspiration around supporting more older adults to live well and independently. And it also has an impact on people living with mental health conditions because of the higher prevalence of smoking in that population. So I thought it was a very timely opportunity to come and share some information with you, which is in the paper, but also to have a conversation about how, as an integrated care system, we can start to tackle some of the remaining barriers and challenges. So I've got a few points I'd like to make, and then I'll kind of move on to what I'm asking the integrated care system to do as a whole, if that's okay. And just to kind of aid the conversation, I'm going to share my screen. I've only got 3 slides, but I think it will help. Bear with me a second. Hoping this will come up. There you go. So just some context. So what I would really like to do is to kind of light a bit of a fire, I guess, under our ambition around something specific. Unintended. The national target to go smoke free means that areas are aiming to have a prevalence of smoking of below 5%. Here in Dorset and BCP councils, we've actually done very well over the past few years. So Dorset around about 9%, BCP council a percent higher at 10%. We're actually really fortunate to be one of the areas where councils have managed to maintain investment in smoking cessation services. So strangely, even though it's a really important public health intervention, it's not covered by the mandate. So in some council areas, they have managed to disinvest in smoking within the rules around the public health grant. That's not the case here. We've had fairly effective services, but I'm not sure that everyone in the system is aware of all of the different ways that people can access support for stopping smoking. So what I'm going to walk you through is a very, very high level plan about how we mobilise and make the most of our capability as a system to try to reach the remaining adults. So as you can see, we've got about 62,000 adults who are still smoking. These are not young people. These tend to be people with a long history of smoking. They are very, very heavily addicted. It is very, very hard to move them off cigarettes if they're coming through standard stop smoking services. However, there we go. We do have, luckily, some really important channels, and I just wanted to kind of raise awareness of those because there have been some great changes in the last couple of years. So first, Live Well Dorset is our standard stop smoking service. It's important to recognise that the volume of people going through that service is getting smaller and smaller. So 4 or 5 years ago, they would see 1,000 people a year. Today, they'll probably support about 500 people. But those 500 people are some of the most addicted and receive really, really intensive behavioural support to go along some of their nicotine replacement therapy. And that's still an effective pathway for people who've had many, many attempts and they're still struggling to quit. As part of that service, for people who maybe have the motivation, maybe their families are saying it's about time you quit, they're strongly in that psychological space of saying I want to quit. They now offer the Alan Carr Easy Way program, which is a seminar. It's very psychologically audible, very psychologically based. It uses cognitive behaviour change principles, and for some people, that's a really effective way of getting them in the right space to give up. The evidence for e-cigarettes is an interesting one. So there is a perception out there, I think, among some clinicians that e-cigarettes and vaping is inherently bad, and it's not a legitimate harm reduction measure. That's not supported by systematic reviews. So the latest Cochrane review on randomised controlled trials that compare e-cigarettes with other modalities show that it is one of the most effective ways of adults quitting smoking. And yet there's still this sort of perception that vaping is bad. And that's because I think two arguments are being mixed up. The argument around marketing vapes to children and young people is totally unacceptable, but it's becoming conflated with a general impression that vaping is somehow difficult and dangerous. But if you're a smoker, switching to vaping is it's the most effective thing you can do other than quitting. It is far less harmful. And lots of adults choose that route and don't go anywhere near formal smoking cessation services. The final pathway, I think, is really impressive. So if you think of the numbers that I've just given you around Live Well Dorset, around about 500 people coming through, I reckon it'd take us 35 years if we only had that channel to reach all of the adult smokers in Dorset. So that's not going to work. But the treating tobacco dependency teams in hospitals are where we can reach a cohort that would never come forward for smoking cessation support. As soon as they're in hospital, if they're an inpatient, they're screened for their smoking status. If they're positive and they're smoking, they're offered immediate nicotine replacement therapy so that they quit while they're in hospital. And then they're offered continual support to try to get them into the right space to say, do you think you're ready when leaving hospital to have a go at quitting properly? And more people are accepting that support. So to give you a flavour of the numbers from University Hospitals Dorset, about 40,000 people were screened last year. 10% of them were smokers, exactly in line with our prevalence, which was reassuring. And of those 4,000 people that went through University Hospitals Dorset, about 70% said, yes, I'd like to have another go at quitting. They either quit for a short period of time while they were in hospital, or they were connected in the community to some of those other sources of support, including pharmacies who are seeing a lot of people, and we don't capture the information on the people who are going to those pharmacies. So through those channels, we've got a really effective way of reaching, I think, a credible volume of people that would get us close to that 30,000 number of adults who would need to quit in the next 3 years if we're going to hit this target. The final one is something called swap to stop. So at the time of writing the paper, I wasn't clear on whether we would actually get this bid through. But on Friday, we were notified that we've been given up to about £1 million worth of stock of certified electronic cigarettes. These are not flavoured vapes. They're not attractive to children. They are highly licensed. They're products that the NHS uses as part of their quit programs. And we've got enough for 65,000 vape starter kits. That's enough for every single adult in Dorset who wants to come forward and register to receive a kit to get them vaping as an initial step on that pathway to getting them to quit. So the conversation today is really about asking whether the integrated care system recognises this as something that I think we should go for. And if it is, to then have that conversation about what more can partners do? What's your role in your organisation in supporting this? I've put in the paper some key actions and some key opportunities. I think, first of all, adopting the ambition. I'd love to see us adopt that today. If the ICP could follow up on some of the progress and we can share that progress through the data that we collect, that would be really good. I'd like every integrated care system organisation to make this a priority. So if we can see in your own organisation plans and strategies that you're prioritising the work around stop smoking, that would be really important. The reason it's important is David alluded to the financial challenge at the moment. NHS England kindly provided the pump priming money to build those treating tobacco dependency teams in hospital, but you know what happens when money gets tight. You know, they can be at risk in some of these organisations unless they're mainstreamed. And trust starts to look at those teams as absolutely fundamental to what we're trying to achieve in the integrated care ambitions. So mainstreaming those teams and providing the support in the hospitals for them to flourish, and in Dorset Healthcare that has a very effective team working on mental health, is absolutely critical. And then there's some cultural things. So support for vaping as a recognised aid, harm reduction aid on the pathway to quitting. I've included an annex which the public health team have worked up based on Chris Whitty's statements around vaping. I think he expresses it brilliantly. It's very, very simple. He says if you smoke, vaping is far less harmful. If you don't smoke, don't vape. And then his third line is that the marketing of vapes to children and young people isn't acceptable, and we should be doing all that we can through licensing and enforcement to try to close off that route. And I think that sums it up perfectly. It doesn't need to be a complicated issue, but please don't conflate the arguments around vaping in children with a really, really useful harm reduction tool for adults. And then I think if we could look at potentially looking at that position statement, getting people to approve it and getting people to adopt it, to use that to achieve our culture change. The final one is this issue of smoke-free community ambassadors. We've tried this before. I'd be really interested in our ambition to work with people in communities to have conversation about smoking. Usually you find people have been on quite a journey of change, and some of the most ardent campaigners against smoking actually are former smokers. So using the power of that change experience and social networks, can we start to develop some community ambassadors in our communities who could introduce that swap to stop offer in the right way? Because it doesn't have to be done through formal health services, even though they play a huge role. So I think that's probably all I wanted to say today, but I'm more than happy to kind of open it up and have a conversation about it. But I think the progress has been impressive. I reckon we could get there by 2027 and actually say that we're pretty smoke-free by 2027, which would be 3 years early, and that would be fantastic. I haven't talked about the money side, but if you want any evidence about the cost, this is obviously cost avoidance, but not only does it cost health services a huge amount to treat these conditions, but the cost of packages of adult social care are 4 times higher for smokers compared with non-smokers. So I think we've all got some skin in this game, and I think we could probably use this opportunity and push something on and actually be proud of achieving this really quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That's really, yeah, that's very succinct, very clear, very easy to understand as an idea of how we can work together. I've got 3 people on the screen who want to come in. So if I can take those, I've got Zoe, Forbes, and then Siobhan.
Hi. So the swap to stop, you say you've got the funding for that. When does that actually start? That was one question. And secondly, as some of you know, I am a smoker and I really need to stop, but my doctor is driving me nuts at the moment. So I'm publicly going to say that I am going to stop and I will definitely do one of these. That's my to you.
So in terms of, shall I
Yes, by all
answer as we go along? Zoe, I think the offer can be drawn on fairly quickly. So they're all on established distribution platforms. We've signed the agreement. I think that they can start flowing fairly quickly. We're talking weeks rather than months. And it's great to hear about your commitment. And if you want any support from the team.
Brilliant. So I will keep you updated as to my progress, all of you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Forbes.
Yeah, thank you. So first and foremost, I'm not sure I can top that commitment, Zoe, but I'm glad to hear your doctors beating you up on a regular basis, so to speak, encouraging you to stop. First and foremost, I want to thank Sam for the paper. I think it was really clear, it was really succinct, and I think it was really, really compelling. You know, we've heard already this morning about the pressure that the system is under, the whole system, and particularly within the NHS, where it's never been as financially challenged as it is now. So the temptation, of course, is to start focusing on what the political agenda is, quite frankly. But, you know, if an ICB and as an ICP, we're sort of going to absolutely stand firm and be true to our previous conversations and what we'll probably hear from Neil, then I think if we're going to improve the long-term outcomes for our population, then we must stand firm in smoking cessation. So I want to wholeheartedly support Sam's position here. I really welcome the work that's been done in the hospitals, because I think when they have a really good opportunity, and it took quite a few years to get that work in place, but now it is in place, it's a real opportunity where you can make progress, because effectively people are a captive audience for a period of time. And I know we spend a lot of time focusing on how busy ED is and delivering 18 weeks, and that is very important. But actually, the smoking cessation work is probably more important in terms of delivering longer term outcomes. So, you know, we mustn't lose sight of that. And that, in combination with the work around the housing, is very important as well. And we've heard that this morning. I think in terms of champions, this is something that could really work well if we can progress our integrated neighbourhood teams. This could be something that we could develop at a local level. So I would be looking to factor that into our planning in that regard. But again, thanks, Sam, and yeah, absolutely fully support this piece of work. Thank you.
Thanks, Forbes. Can I take Siobhan and then Ben Ansell?
Yes, thank you. It's a really clear paper. Just again, to fully support in terms of smoke-free, I had the pleasure of working with the respiratory lead for London when I was in London, and was completely, I would say, brainwashed, but the value-based proposition around smoke-free, both in terms of financial benefits to the system's outcomes for patients, health, and many more indicators, I was completely on side with, and actually do think it's a one thing that everybody can lean into. So I'm really committed to smoke-free across all the hospitals here. I do think it's been quite interesting, because you know about the vape. We had a pilot, or we've started a pilot on vaping in Poole Hospital. And the concern from the public and from governors was pretty marked. And I did make sure we circulated all the latest public health advice, you know, but actually there's still a degree of public concern that I think we just need to all stand together in terms of the messages within your paper, which I think are really very clear. So thank you. But we've got a lot more to do, and I'm just committed to do that. I think this is something that we can progress relatively quickly across our system.
Thanks, Siobhan. That's great to hear. Ben Ansell.
Yeah, thank you. Just a very specific question really to Sam, and I'm reading in the appendix. I think what you just said about sort of Chris Whitty and the Fraser, if you smoke, vaping is much safer. If you don't smoke, don't vape. That's excellent advice. I think question I've got is there clarity on vaping in the presence of others? Because I know that's an area that is raised quite a lot, particularly in the presence of young people. So take your point about not encouraging people to vape if they don't smoke. That's absolutely clear. But I think there is an area of, certainly for me, some unclarity around that.
I think Jenny wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, if that's okay, I've got a few questions, if that's okay. So I thought the paper was really helpful until I got to your recommendations, and it was the first bullet of 5.1 that I just thought, what does that mean? Because actually we can all say we're committed. It's a bit like the discussion earlier, but unless we've got something practical to do, how are we actually going to shift? Bearing in mind that the 63,000 that are remaining are long-time smokers and quite hard to shift. So I think some of the stuff we put up today, to me, have been really helpful because I think it's answered some of my questions. So like Ben, though, I had to sorry, just before I finish on the paper, there was one other thing that I thought might be not powerful, but that was missing from the paper for me, which is secondary smoking, because we know that smoking doesn't just impact the person that is smoking, it also impacts people around them, and particularly in hospitals and places like that, where you will have people that have got respiratory conditions. The last thing they need is to smell cigarette. I'm talking personally because I can't stand the smell, and it will trigger me. So, but I think there is something about reminding people that it's not just about the people that are smoking. There's also an issue for people that don't smoke that inhale it secondary. Then going on to vaping, interestingly, a lot of businesses, transport, lots of places now are telling people that they can't vape. And I just wonder if that's going to impact the things that we are doing to try and get people to stop smoking, because we can be as positive as we like. But actually, if all the mood is moving against vaping and people are feeling that they're still being outcast if they go into vaping, I just wonder how we combat that really to make sure that we can get there. My last two questions was going to be around the treating tobacco dependency, because that slide that you set out with the different steps that you can take, and you talked about the first one, I can't remember what it was, being, it's going to take us 65 years, I think you said, or 35 years to get there. I wondered how long it would take us to get through the 63,000 people with the treating tobacco dependency. However, probably most of those people won't necessarily turn up at hospital for something else and then be able to avail themselves of that treatment. So I just wondered, is there another way to be offering that, i.e. with pharmacies, so that we can be more proactive? Because it sounds like you were saying that's quite an effective way to get people off tobacco. And then the last thing was just around the starter kits, which sounds amazing that we've got 65,000 and 63,000 people. So that sounds about right. It was just the thing around cost. And I'm assuming it's cheaper to vape than it is to smoke. I'm making an assumption. I have no idea about the cost of either. So if it is, I just wonder if we can include that in our communication also, because it might encourage people to actually take the starter kit up and then continue down that road. That was it. Thanks.
Lots in there. You'll come back on Ben's point. Ben, were you talking about the potential harmful effects of vape fumes? Was that what was behind your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there isn't enough evidence yet to definitively know what the risks of vaping are. What we do know is that it's far less harmful, because if you look at cigarette smoke, you're looking at an additional, I think, up to 6,000 potentially hazardous chemicals in the combustion of tobacco. So it's a relative risk reduction. And although no clinician would say vaping is totally risk-free, it's an order of magnitude less harmful than tobacco smokes. If you look at
Sorry, it's not the comparison with tobacco. I think that's clear. But what is people saying? Well, I don't smoke in a space with children because I know that's not a good thing, so I smoke outside. But now I'm vaping. That's okay. It's that difference. That's what I'm coming from. I'm not saying that vape, whatever the right word was, the products of when I exhale having vaped. That's what I'm asking about. If I exhale having smoked, I think there's a general consensus that's not a good thing in terms of passive smoking, secondary smoking. So I step outside to have a cigarette, but now I'm vaping. It's okay in the car. It's okay in the space. That's the question I'm asking.
So I think, Jenny, you've also raised some issues around communications, and I think before we go out with the swap to stop offer, Kirsty's going to be involved in some of the South West work, where directors of public health are going to try to do this collectively across the South West. So we are going to be looking at a substantial campaign, and as part of that, I think we need to address some of those concerns head on. The other point you raised, I think, is really important, which is that we shouldn't be penalising and stigmatising current smokers, but equally we should avoid penalising and stigmatising people who want to use electronic cigarettes responsibly. So some of those issues around how you use them and what's the public acceptability of use, we need to address through some of the support around the Swap to Stop campaign. Your question about treating tobacco dependency, I think it is just a channel, but it is very effective at picking people up who are starting to develop long-term conditions, maybe having a hospital stay. We'd have never found those people. They won't come through standard stop smoking services. One of the points I didn't put in the paper, or I might have put it in, but I didn't talk about in my presentation, is that at the moment there's a dearth in the supply of some of the previously really effective medications. So pharmacotherapy for smoking is not in a good place at the moment. So we used to be able to prescribe things like buprenorphine. That's no longer available. And there isn't a huge amount of other options coming through. So vaping in that space is actually a really, really important tool at the moment. I would say, picking up your point about 5.1, what is it that we could measure as an integrated care system? I'm open to suggestions about that. We could share some data, but I would also think that we would be trying to look at commitments around investment in the treating tobacco dependency teams. So are they still being maintained by trusts? And I'd like to mention Heidi Croucher by name in this space, because Heidi has been a one-woman force of nature around this agenda for years and started the work in the trusts when it didn't have a lot of traction. She's been in and around this agenda locally for a long time, and just through force of will has really led this work brilliantly across the system. So feeling that those teams have support and that there's an enabling environment, that trusts are proud of that work and are taking down those barriers so that they can work effectively in that space, really, really important. And that's more of a technical discussion rather than something for the ICP. But there are still problems, for example, of those teams being able to prescribe nicotine replacement therapy there and then on the wards. It's not universally the same across Dorset. So we need to work through those teams to make sure those differences disappear and use clinical networks and clinical leadership to make that happen wherever we can. Has that answered most of your questions, Jess?
Yeah.
We are coming short of time, so if we can just be brief, Leslie, and then John.
Just briefly, I mean, to me, this is a bit of a no-brainer, really, from a health perspective. I think it's. I'm less bothered about the impact of the vapors, but I'm imagine there's quite a reasonable evidence suggests that actually parent vaping might influence a child to vape. I guess that's the only downside. That when I hear on the other side of people in schools trying to literally go into the loos where the kids are all vaping and having to remove them, there's a whole culture which I think is being clearly it's commercially very attractive, isn't it? So that's why it's going to be pumped through. So there's something that's kind of substitution. I think obviously psychologically it'd be great if we didn't have to substitute, but if we have to substitute, then I'd much rather it was a vape than something else. So I totally agree. But I think a campaign that we can just flood across every ounce of someone in this room through the system and just say for this month, actually, we're going to try and Dorset smoke free. Everyone's got a mini toolkit. They've got the lines. They've got the whatever. Totally support anything like that. Yeah.
Thanks, Leslie.
Last point from John, if I could. Yeah.
It was just around, you talked about the fact that there's few people, therefore there is a sense in which people are in quite an exposed position if you are looking at those that choose to smoke. and having some support as an employer or as a colleague to be able to know how to approach that conversation in a supportive way would be incredibly helpful. Speaking as an employer, that would be a good piece of kit to have in a back pocket.
I think there are lots of other factors here, and again, I'm looking at Ian from the Chamber's perspective, from the LEP perspective. You know, the idea of helping through businesses to have those conversations about, you know, how supporting the stopping working. I think that there's a lot more that we can do. So I guess I mean, you've asked for us whether we agree we could adopt that ambition, and I'm hearing that people feel that absolutely we should aim for that ambition. Partners now, I think, the opportunity to go away and see what they need in their organisations to make it work. Come back to you if they do need resources, just as John described, whether there's an opportunity for people to be able to say, how do I do that in this particular space? And I guess your other ask was basically making sure that the smoking seems to be mainstreamed into our hospital teams, and I think that would be something that would be good to hear from our trust partners, whether that is something that they can commit to at some point.
That'd be great. I think one final ask is, if you read through that vaping position statement carefully, if there are other communication issues and public acceptability issues that we need to be aware of, that's really helpful to know now. And then when we're developing the campaigns, we can bring those in and sort of think about how to position this. And there's lots of different ideas. I think the point about not wanting behaviour to be mimicked, there is something about the way that we would present this. It is a pathway to quitting. And this is just the stage that you're on as you're starting to get less dependent on cigarettes and starting to think about switching. It's not a lifestyle thing that you've suddenly switched to. So there's some careful thought that needs to go into the behavioural elements of that campaign. And I'm sure that Matt Lenny and others will be thinking about these issues really, really carefully.
Thank you. I can see, thank you, Ian Girling, who said that the Chamber has a focus on health and well-being, so we'll help to pick that up. So we need to move on. So is there something particular you would like to add?
Yeah, just really, really quickly, in answer, I think it was Jenny that said it, about the costings, just to bear in mind that the average packet of 20 cigarettes is about £14–15. And through citizens' advice, when we're getting them looking at sort of managing the money and actually disposable income, if you take that at 20, and I'm talking about people on UC and et cetera, you know, you work that out at 20 a day for 7 days a week, that is a huge amount of their income, and therefore their disposable income is a lot less. So I feel, from our point of view, no, we cannot advise people to stop smoking. However, that, just to say to you, that is now coming into when my advisors go through what they're spending their money on and their household budgets, and actually using it as a weekly amount and a monthly amount, and they cannot believe it. So I think we can have I say we've got to be careful how we do it, but I feel it's high on our agenda too with the clients that we deal with.
Perfect. Well, once they've been highlighted, the cost of it, then being signposted to somebody who can help them with it, I think that sounds like a great combination. So thanks, Zoe. And thank you, Sam. I think you've raised something that's working, something we can all work on and showcase the impact that it can have. And that was a great example. So thank you for doing
Thanks so much for your support.
Thank you. So can we move straight into hearing from Neil and theme on strategy into action?
Thank you. What I really wanted to do was talk about Sam's example as strategy into action. So I'm not going to go through a timetable detail by detail about what's the progress of this and what's the progress of that, because I don't think I'd like to think that's not the best use of the minds and the time that we have here, but more talking about the fact that the strategy is in action already. So if I can make a couple of points and then look forward to the discussion. Firstly, and I know everyone will nod because we always nod, but again, referring to the work that Sam's pointed out, prevention and early intervention is the only way we will make the difference we want to, and as a system meet our vision and aspiration. We all know that we have to be brilliant at doing today's things. We have to be better at doing today's things, and everyone is striving to do that. But that will just make us better at what we're doing today. Prevention and early intervention is the only way we will transform the lives of people of Dorset. But I'm really aware that as I say that, everyone thinks, oh, good, we can turn off. This isn't today. This is something in the future. Yes, we all believe in that. But what do we actually do? The point I sort of want to make, and that's why I'm so grateful for Sam doing such an excellent presentation, is that it's not something in the future. The vast majority of the things we need to do to make prevention a reality is not high tech, new whizzy things that we're waiting for, another expensive drug, a new bit of tech, another cath lab, a completely different way of working. Most of the transformation is going to come from transforming our thinking and our priorities and our focus. It's the things we know what things we need to do better. The data's all there, and the smoking is a really good example. And it's not to minimize how well everyone's doing. We're better than we should be in terms. We're better than the national figures. UHD are doing really, really well. There's lots of things that are going well, but we can do better. And I know it's something about there's a balance here. There's something about working in transformation and thinking how we're going to change everything in 5 years, which is exciting. It feels different. Oh, great, it's a new dawn. The world's going to feel different. But the reality is that for our 5 pillars, the things we've committed to, all of them are doing things we're doing now, but doing better. So when you look at blood pressure, atrial fibrillation, childhood obesity, mental illness, falls, we have the answers. And I'm afraid there isn't sort of something that's going to look better and shinier. We have to just really focus on doing the things we know, the things the data tells us. The other part of that focus, and you mentioned it right at the beginning, Cecilia, is not trying to do everything. And I'm really aware that I'm sort of a bit of a stuck record on this. And I don't know what your organisations are like, but it's very clear. And I think colleagues from the ICB would concur, but please correct me. It's bloody hard to stop things. Really, really hard to stop things that have a momentum, even when we know we don't have great evidence that they're all working. So part of the focus of the sort of transformation team is to support people in pausing things, in saying, actually, could these 3 projects be brought into one? Because again, we know the things that will make the big difference. And every time we're spending time and energy on something that is lower value, reference sort of Siobhan's sort of experience recently in sort of value improvement. Every time we're doing something that's lower value, that's people, time, money and resource that could be spent on the things we know make the difference, for instance, the smoking program. So I suppose it's sort of what I'm saying is we know exactly what we need to do. We know we need to focus on those things. And I think focus on those things, and I'm really drawn to Jenny's point, was, what's the real ask, Sam? And I think if we're really focused on this, whether it's quarterly or twice a year, the figures on smoking cessation come back to this group. And we look at what we said we'd achieve as a group, and we look at how well we're doing. Otherwise, there is the risk we talk about doing it. Yes, we're all committed to it. Yes, we've got these things going, but we don't hold ourselves to account. And I wonder whether that is a different way of thinking. We say these are the 5 things or the 6 things or the 3 things that we are really going to prioritize on, and we bring back hard numbers and commit. It's so exciting that what we see in the smoking cessation, I think Sam portrayed it well, and the level of engagement and the comments from everyone in the room, was that we all know no single part of the system can do it on their own, but with the system approach, the sum of the parts, the whole is so much greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what I think is so exciting about this group, and of course the ICB and the work we're doing, is that Dorset's not very big. We are well aligned. It probably doesn't always feel like our relationships are optimal. That's the nature of the beast, but boy, are they better than many, many areas around us. And there is this shared commitment. So when I think about transformation, rather than showing you graphs of meeting dates and when this will happen, it's the culture change that we are experiencing. I can see it over the course of the last year, with the 18 months, the fact that we're very, very good at things and we're sort of leaning in. How can we work together on this? So I suppose the point I'm really making, it doesn't need new things. We know what we've got to do. They're not particularly exciting in some level, asking sort of, as Sam said, sort of 70-year-old dyed in the wool people who are addicted to alcohol to move to vaping. That's not an exciting job for any individual, but the outcome and the impact that it will have for this generation and the next generation in Dorset if we work in a different way is truly exciting.
Neil,
Yeah.
Neil, can I just come in? I mean, again, I just have to apologise that you did use, there was some what might be considered bad language used earlier on, and how we describe our citizens. I think we just need to be a bit careful about our language, given that we are in a very open space. So just as a reminder.
Thank you very much. And if my passion falls over for the people of Dorset, each and every one of them, I apologise, and thank you for pointing that out. So I think the point that we can't all do it on our own, we do accept that. Then the opportunity is, how do we best work together? And I think when we talk about a communications programme for a swap to stop, that truly needs to be a pan-Dorset communication programme. The same logo, the same message is seen everywhere, on the buses, in the businesses, in the voluntary sector, and we do have that potential. I think the final point I'd make is that for us all to think, how can we hold ourselves to account? What would a truly pan-Dorset approach look like? Which metrics should we all agree that we're going to do? Because I think the smoking programme is just one example of maybe 4 or 5 things that we can really lean into. And of course, we all know the benefits are manifold for every part of the system, for our voluntary sector, for our businesses who don't want people off work or their employees ill, for our acute sector, who of course gets the really sharp end of the outcome of so many of these diseases, for our primary care teams. So I just really wanted to reflect more, hold the mirror back up to Sam's work, which of course is everyone's work, and the success in everyone in the system. We were ahead of target, and Sam set out a bold ambition to exceed the national targets. And I think this model of working as a system, we are making progress. We're making progress on all the system way of working, but it's not particularly exciting. It's going back to what we know works and then thinking of it in a completely different way. So I'm conscious of time. If I could stop there and invite robust challenge, no doubt. I suppose my final question is, why aren't we doing this as well as we possibly could? And what could we do as a group and as a system, which is more than words, which is more than saying, yes, we're all committed to this, that would make the step change for this? And then this is the model for the other key innovations, key transformation programs that we've agreed as a system.
Thank you, Neil. Very passionate and very, yes, great to hear. So thank you. Anyone want to come in? Yes,
just picking up from that, I had a question on using the smoking cessation as an example for us to see whether or not we can think out the box and do things differently, because that might be the thing that tackles the extra 63,000. So his last thing about the cost, I was shocked by the cost of a packet of cigarettes. So bearing in mind that we're in a cost of living, is there something about going out to organisations that help people with finances and actually either skilling them up on smoking cessation or having somebody in there as part of their team, so that when people come in and talk about their finances, they can then be saying, have you thought about this? So is there something different we can do that we haven't done before that could try to get beneath that number of people?
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. Thanks for the team. I think I think for me the smoking is a fantastic example of how of initiative that is really easy to get around. I'm not minimising the work that we've done, but it is really obvious. It's really easy to get around. I think there are other initiatives that also fall into that category, but perhaps we could put some more momentum around. And the one that I'm really passionate about, because of personal interest, is hypertension. We've actually done some really good work in Dorset around hypertension and campaigns, but there is still so much more that we can do. And we know that the impact of hypertension is absolutely huge, and it's huge on our hospitals, it's huge on our ongoing, and it's huge on our comorbidity and mortality. So I think I think there's a lot we could do in that, and I think there's a lot we could do in that is actually different to what we're currently doing. So like, for instance, campaigns within industry, you know, around blood pressure checking, that kind of thing, because we know that actually a lot of people that have got hypertension don't know they've got it, and a lot of them are in stressful jobs and in industry. So it's whether we could do something sort of a little bit more. I know we're doing a lot around hypertension, but whether we can really push that further quicker, in the same way as we've just committed to doing the smoking.
Thank you. Yeah, I must say the idea of doing something differently. I mean, with the number of times that there will be a conference where, I mean, in the past, I've actually stood on a stand at the conference and offered people the opportunity to have a particular. It was a diabetes screen. We did it with the full knowledge of, you know, the diabeticians. They got proper advice, and it was actually a BMA conference. So actually, everybody should have understood what it was, but we still identified individuals who were at risk. The opportunity to do that much more in the types of environments where people just happen to be would be really quite straightforward to be able to achieve. And I'm looking at Ian on the screen again as the opportunity to talk through the different ways that businesses work together, even people, you know, again, voluntary sector conferences. Zoe.
Yeah, it was just coming back to the voluntary sector again, and obviously, Jenny, that's what I alluded to about what we were doing. However, I think we will get some kickback on people that organisations that are supporting people with financial resilience, etc. So I mean, I would welcome, and obviously all in the wider community of the health service and everything else, people will be hopefully starting to look at this. And I think I would, and I know we're not going to get a true statement about how we're going to speak to clients and patients about this, but I just feel I would feel happier going out and marching on with this to my counterparts in the third sector if we could have sort of a statement or whatever about how we can do this without offending people or that we're telling them what to do. And I just think we need one voice with this. Similarly, in going into the businesses and that sort of thing, that how we can make this a softer approach in the sense that this will help you, but we're not there as a third sector to. We've got not the expertise of the health side, but obviously we've got the expertise in supporting people in managing their money and budget. So it's just, I just think we need to sing from the same hymn sheet, basically, or from the one voice.
Agree. I think the comms and the messaging around this is absolutely vital as to how we get that piece right. I can see Ash, you've put something in the chat there for about hypertension checks. Thank you. I've got David and then Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Neil, for your passion. Actually, and that it's the message about strategy into action actually just chimes with where the BCP Health and Wellbeing Board at their last meeting in December had a workshop, and that was one of the strong things that came out of that. Well, we've got these different strategies. Council's got a strategy. ICP's got a strategy. Do we need a Health and Wellbeing Board strategy? Well, we actually just need a strategy to move those strategies into action, and I think trying to link that sort of that strategy into action theme in terms of what health and wellbeing boards, and I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts about how we, just in terms of our agendas at health and wellbeing boards, you know, there's certain statutory things we have to consider and certain reports have to come, but I'm almost keen on calling it the Health and Wellbeing Board with a strapline of strategy into action, just to remind us at every meeting that that's what we've got to sort of be thinking about, not just approving this statutory report because it has to go through the Health and Wellbeing Board, but actually focusing us at every meeting that's what we want to see, something coming out of the meeting.
I think that even just putting that on there just reminds people what they're there for. I think that's a really good one. I can see we've got two more. I've got Leslie and then Ian to come in. We're going to have to cut discussions at that point if we can, just to get the last two items through.
Yeah, I mean, just in this space, we've got evidence. We know what we need to do. I think it's about behaviour change and mobilising into action. I mean, Sam's got every bit of evidence and every bit of thing that we need to do to help population health. It's irrefutable. But yeah, examples I'm aware of when I was in London of the barbers taking blood pressure checks. It doesn't have to always be the pharmacist.
Exactly.
And that's kind of, so it's usually the same people that get layered and layered and layered of the people having to do the checks. And it actually, we need our population to want to take care of themselves, and that is a bigger message across the piece. It doesn't matter if it's blood pressure or actually exercising more or stopping smoking. How do we get people to take a pride in their health and well-being? And I think there's a, and I appreciate if you're under the cosh and you're, it's the last thing on your mind, and that's the difficulty for people that we really need to get the ones that's not their greatest priority when they wake up in the morning, unfortunately. But I think that comes back to things that discussion we've been having about it's actually for the people that have got that sensibility. We can kind of understand that the rationale. It's not such a big deal. For those that actually it's really not a big deal. That's where the challenges, I think, happen, and that's where we do need to get much smarter. But I think there's lots of people we can actually just be more mindful and having kind of campaigns at the right time that are targeted and focused and multi-pronged. We've had some good
knowing your numbers, something that's normal. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody
exactly.
do that.
Yeah. What is your blood? People don't know their blood pressure. Does everybody know their blood pressure sat on this table? They probably should. It's just how do we know? In fact, but Debbie's probably got a little something in her bag to check.
Yeah, we can do that. Ian Gelling.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, so I'll be really quick. I think just to echo the point that Zoe made, the language is really important within this. We're doing a lot of work with businesses and their employees around health and well-being. And I think, when we're talking to business, it's about a happier workforce, a more productive workforce, better staff retention, lower absenteeism as well. I think we just need to be mindful of kind of going in and telling people what to do in our comms, and there needs to be a real message of encouragement. Just in terms of what we're doing, we have a men's health event coming up that we're running with the hospitals, where we're looking at prostate cancer. We want to look at blood pressure, all those sorts of things. We have a monthly walk in nature as well to encourage activity. That's got a fantastic number of people attending, upwards of 30 people on those. So in terms of the businesses, we've got a good platform to work from in this, but it's really important we get the messaging and the comms right. So thank you.
And I think so. Neil, does that give you enough of commitment and actual practical commitment to getting stuff done?
Yeah, I never doubted the commitment and the passion of Dorset and the people. I think it's the point that was made earlier, is like, how do we make sure we most effectively channel and focus our commitment and passion to deliver those things that are important? So I couldn't be more heartened, and I hope that that's a feeling that's in the room. Obviously it's hard when we're remote, and apologies that I couldn't be there today.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. We've got 2 more items to try and get through today. So the next item that we're looking at is being introduced by David Clayton Smith. It's about creative health. David.
Cecilia, thank you. Let me give a bit of context, because this isn't about discovering creative health, because I think we all kind of know about that. But there has been for a while an appreciation of the link between broadly the arts or creativity and the health and well-being of individuals and communities. And about 6 years ago, there was an all-party parliamentary group got together to really kind of look into that. And I think a lot of the motivation there was the worry that we over-medicalised a lot of what we did in supporting our population and our residents. And certainly the NHS continual demand for money. We had to look at alternative ways of looking at that. Part of what came out of that all-party parliamentary review was the establishment of the National Centre for Creative Health, which I mentioned, and I'm a trustee of it. And in the work that the National Centre's done, it's worked and been sponsored by NHS England to produce a kind of toolkit about how we can apply some ideas around creative health, and it's in operation, I think, in 6 or 7 of the ICSs already. And a lot of what comes out of that, of course, is about loneliness. It's about communities. It's very much kind of community based. It's about the impact of reducing the demand on GP appointments, about reducing visits to A&E. And actually also reducing dependence on prescription drugs. So there's a sort of demonstrable benefit for the individuals and the communities, but there's also a relief on the pressure on what you might call conventional medical clinical provision. The National Centre commissioned a creative review at the end of last year. It was launched in December, and the commissioners were, Michael Marmot and Martin Marshall. I mean, in other words, people who kind of got a really strategic interest in how we can harness, if you like, creativity to support the health and well-being of our populations. And what I hear from them, and there's a lot of research that goes through, UCL supports the programme, is a lot of really good individual activities. And when I speak to some of the providers in our own counties, I had a very interesting conversation with Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, which is, it's great if you get somebody who really supports it, and when they move on in their jobs, it all stops. When we talk to GPs, there are and have been link workers put within systems, and there's quite a lot of social prescribing which has tended, although not exclusively, to be around physical undertaking, so whether it's gym or swimming. This is all very patchy, and what the purpose of my paper and the proposal is to try and see whether we can raise awareness of the benefits of creative health and how it might come through, because I think it needs to be recognised as a legitimate healthcare service rather than just an interesting optional one. And I think it ought to be a prescribed legitimate service, because if this is offering better value than the way we approach some areas of our healthcare and reduces some of the demand upon some of the providers, then it would be to great advantage. I think the idea of having Dorset Health Month, fortnight, week, whatever it is, or something, is about getting visibility. It's about trying to get the issues kind of focused in an area. If these things work, actually, they're much more community-based. So I'm not suggesting this needs to all be sort of central pinnacle, but to get the visibility that we need, I think we need to pull it together. It's a lot of work, but there are a lot of people who are very interested, but it's fragmented. So this is about, as someone mentioned it earlier, I was in the room, but this is about program management, it's about coordination, it's about putting it together, it's about communication, and it's about perhaps kind of getting some kind of connected imagery. So these things are all seen to be part of it. And of course, it needs to support some real world valuation as opposed to just research to be able to demonstrate some of the benefits coming through. So my question here is, are there people who are energized enough to sit down and see what it would take? Because I don't have a plan. I don't have a plan for it, but I think there could be a plan for it, but it would take a lot of people who are going to go, well, we could shape it like this, we could do that. And it's probably also about realistically limiting the ambition for the first version so it doesn't all dissipate, but it gets sufficient focus. So I'll stop there, and I'm very happy to answer any questions, but I think it's a very important part of how we deliver and improve the health and well-being of the communities that we are responsible for.
David, I mean, you and I discussed this with Paul Goff at AUB, who was very helpful in the potential of offering some student support for some of that creative thinking behind this type of thing, and possibly even, it would be students' availability to work on some of the research elements of it, as well as some of the monitoring of impact as well. So again,
yes, so that was a similar follow-on conversation with the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. They had a recovery orchestra that worked in Bristol for drug users. It's kind of really interesting stuff, but it takes a frame within which these people are operating.
Just two observations really. One, reflecting Jane's portfolio actually, in terms of the the concept of commissioning services or paying for services, which I think, or prescribing things, is kind of interesting in the space of adult social care, and the idea of using direct payments to access cultural activities as part of day opportunities is something Dorset Council have been involved a bit in exploring this, and I think that's an open door to push on. So we do find places for people who want to do pottery or art workshops. We found a studio for a group of people with hearing loss to produce art together, and they've gone on to amazing things. So there's some really good opportunities there, I think, if you look within adult social care. And I think in terms of, again, economic support generation, looking at alternative ways of resourcing the voluntary and community sector, this is quite an interesting space to work in. And I think that is part of the picture. The other thing is I'm looking at Jess across the room here. I don't know what the protocol is here, but there's an event that she's involved in setting up that as part of the Arts Business Company and others next Monday. Would it be appropriate to invite her just to kind of mention that? I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm going to it. Yeah, but no.
She's here for that reason, I think.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, just in terms of the pushing on open doors, there's an amazing event with some incredible speakers, some of whom are on the screen. Yeah, I think there's going to be a really lively discussion at that place, perhaps, which will come forward with your answer. Who's going to be your allies in bringing that together?
Yeah, lovely.
So, jumping the gun.
We've got Ian who wants to ask a question.
Thank you. David, you mentioned in passing subscribing.
Yeah.
I agree it's patchy, but where it's working, it's doing very much what you're talking about, and it's not all about physical things. I mean, there are referrals to art groups and so on. Are you planning to have some of that input in your task and finish group from people who've actually been doing similar things in GP practices for a few years?
I mean, yes, it'd be really welcome. National Centre for Creative Health work very closely with the, whatever it's called, NASP, isn't it? The National Association of Social Prescribers. And there's a very strong link with that. And the leaders of that also sit on our advisory group. But yes, it would be a very, very good idea to have them. Yeah, thank you.
I guess I'm just reflecting back on some of the conversations we had earlier, that this is something that could be everything to everyone.
Yes.
Other groups that we really do endorse it, particularly want to target through this sort of work, and that we should be focused. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's the voluntary groups. Right. I was at Pavilion Dance yesterday, and I'm sure you know IUB's dance program's closing. So it's a big dilemma for them. So it means that the funding gets affected, but clearly they have groups with Parkinson's disease or whatever, and it's really valuable and beneficial. But they haven't got any money to sustain it. And I think it comes back to some of this people about having that, you know, a course to create a framework, and then within that, they can come and do things, which is what Cameron and colleagues do. So we need to have a kind of, I guess, efficiencies of scale somewhere within that setup. But I guess it's sort of the arts generally, you know, in my world are not really well supported. Trying to combine that with actually who would like to do this for, lots of people need to get involved. But actually, are we actually talking about mental health interventions primarily? At one level, is it dementia, which is coming thick and fast, that we don't really have solutions? Yeah. I think we've got data in Dorset to demonstrate where the key points are. Is that what we do as a system? Again, same thing. Do we sort of think, okay, let's use that fantastic work because it's amazing. And, you know, you say it's irrefutable, really, the advantages it will have. Where do we focus that effort? If it's coming from a sort of efforts across the piece, levels, you know, from the voluntary sector in particular.
No, I think support and the funding and the focus. But I mean, if people are, I put my email kind of address on this. If people, from a point of view, are going to go, you need to talk to Fred or whoever. It would be really good to try and just get a small group of people together to explore this, because it could sort of go on and never come to anything, even though one says it's a really great idea. Or we could, or maybe I'm wrong with the idea of, you know, kind of health a month or whatever it is. Maybe there's a different way of doing it. I just think it's such an important topic that it's too fragmented at the moment. It doesn't need to be overly controlled. It needs to be enabled, I think, to a greater extent. And this legitimizing it as a really beneficial service, so that it is worth commissioning, I think is, for me, a really important element of it. Thank
Seems like we've got the core bones.
Yeah, sorry, I like the idea of the health bump because I think it can bring together some of the things we've discussed in fixation, high potential, all that kind of stuff. But I also wanted to pick up on something that Ash put in the chat, which is health partners.
Yeah.
It might be a really good idea to be working with them because I think they can help around the thinking through the fragmentation, the evidence, the research, etc. So it might be worth just kind of linking with that.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Do you want to bring Jess in at this point, or?
Yes, why not? I mean, it'd be lovely.
I was going to say we've got a few minutes, but before we can get into the next item. So Jess, do you want to come to the table and just tell us a little bit about your event?
Yes, so there's a event held at the Corn Exchange on Monday, which is a event where we are bringing the creative and the health sector together to kind of share some of that best practice, some of the examples from across the country where this is working, where we have got organisations, creative organisations who are working with health to deliver these programmes. So we've got speakers throughout the day, organisations like myself who are currently already delivering on the ground those types of activities that you're all talking about and that we're already delivering, and so you get to kind of see kind of some of those things that are happening as well, and lots of space and time and opportunity to talk and to kind of, like you say, start to bring some of these key players together so we can start to make it less fragmented and start to bring a little bit more vision and a bit more of a pathway as to how we can move that forward.
Do we have to book to attend?
From a health perspective, I would say that we would be welcoming you with open arms. So yes, please, if you do want to either get in touch with me, I can either let people know the emails, or if Arts Development are the people that are kind of leading on the organisation.
Give us a simple email address that everybody can contact.
Yeah. Do you want to go with my email and I can forward it from there? So that's engage@dorchesterarts.org.uk.
Thank you very much indeed.
I did book.
Fascinating.
But yes, so yeah, I know that they would be very welcome. Thank
you. Oh, that's brilliant.
So I mean, I have to say same thing here, and I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, this is the role, our task, particularly in this group, never mind our ambition overall, is to enable this social capital to come together, to work more effectively. And it sounds like there's kind of a few elements. One, I mean, you said it yourself, David, about it actually it's already there. It's already working. Can we enable it to come together in a more coordinated way, in a more high-profile way, so that people notice it and can take full advantage of it? Be that individuals in the population or our clinical teams and support teams who know that it's there and can help people, guide people towards it. So I think the notion of a month, don't water it down, David. I think the notion of a month is a really terrific idea. And if we can energize people to just throw something into it, we're kind of always have got some kind of health and awareness month, which is great. And people just do it. There's loads of things around here, you know, cake and wear a green jumper and all these other things that we do to try and contribute something to recognize it. I think people will engage with it, build it, and they'll come, sort of thing. So if there are people who would be interested in having that conversation just to try and get something going and then build towards this, I think it could be a terrific boon for the Dorset and BCP area. So I think it's a great idea, and I'd like to see us try and pursue it and make it work.
I think you have our endorsement, you have our passion. I think what we need to do again is make it happen. Thank you, David, and thank you, Jeff. I can see that. Can I ask Paul and Rupert to the table, sorry, so to come and talk about anchor institutions, just while I just listen to Louise, what you wanted to come in here?
Thank you. I was just going to say that I'd be happy to talk to you, David, about it. I'm looking forward to the Arts and Health event. I'm already booked in. And at Healthwatch, we've often worked with organisations who support, I was thinking of craft workshops with people who have cancer. We've done some work with people with dementia around arts, and the office where we're based runs art classes, people with mental health issues. I think arts is a really good way of looking at helping people with loneliness, isolation, and confidence as well. So yeah, I'd be happy to speak to you about it.
Thanks, Louise. That's great.
Thank you very much indeed. So our last main item of today is about anchor institutions, and we have Paul Eagledon from the Public Health team and Rupert who's joining us to talk us. You gave us a good paper, and you've obviously done an awful lot of work. And again, here is an example where there's a lot of work gone into creating a great plan with some super opportunities. The challenge we have is that there are 6 things in there that you're suggesting that we could do. Resourcing all of those may be a challenge, but if you talk us through where perhaps one might prioritize some of those things as well. So by all means.
Afternoon everyone, I'm Paul Eagledon, it's my Rupert, who does most of the work on institutions. I'm just going to give a few words of background, and then hand over to Rupert to raise a couple of questions for you to discuss. Just before I launch into background, I'm quite struck by the links really between the strategy into action agenda item and the last one around arts and creativity and health. There is something about how we take good ideas and put them into practice and bring focus to them. And I was quite struck by Neil's comments earlier about evidence. I'm not sure he used the phrase evidence of impact, but that's something that really has struck us around the Anchors Institution agenda. So very quickly by a background, to 2021, we leading the Dorset and BCP Health and Wellbeing Boards brought the Health Foundation for a webinar. We had a great session with them looking at anchor institutions and the possibilities that they afford us. And we invited partners to sign a charter committed to working in that sphere. A number of you around the table may well have signed that charter, or certainly your organisations have. So a key theme in that charter was the idea of committing to setting up a network, which we then looked to implement in 2022. And I think it's fair to say, if a rather crude distillation, we found lots of enthusiasm for Anchor's work, but boy, did we struggle to get any evidence of impact. Could we get anyone to really step up and articulate the quantity of things that they were doing, or the impacts they were making? And I think I personally felt quite frustrated around that agenda, because if we don't evidence, how do we know where we need to go further faster? How do we know as a support project where we might encourage the system as a whole or work with particular partners to go further faster? So in 2023, I think I was carrying the idea of us doing an audit. Let's be really hard on them. They'll have to tell us what they're doing. That kind of got softened a little bit. We were fortunate to have a NHS graduate management training scheme trainee with us for 8 weeks, who just focused on what would an audit look like. She did a lot of research, found a great tool in Leeds, developed by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. That gave rise to an evidence base that we could use to try and baseline where we are across Dorset in terms of our progress around Anchor's ambitions. So through 2023, Rupert worked with a number of partners to try and baseline where we're at. Over to Rupert.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. And yeah, I just wanted to do 2 things very quickly. And one is draw your attention to those 6 opportunities Cecilia mentioned, which are on page 41, I think, of your agenda pack. And also just repeat what Paul and others have said today, I guess, which is, we know that we can't do everything, and that's equally true of the Anchor Institution agenda or ethos or way of working. So I think what we're framing these opportunities as is based on what we've heard from partners out there in the system about what they've done, what they're doing and where they'd like to go. We think that these are 6 kind of clues, if you like, about where there's potential to do more going further downstream in future. And one of them, I suppose, is particularly relevant today, which is opportunity 6 around leadership, both within individual partners, individual anchor organisations, and across the system. And that, I think, sort of leads on to 2 questions that we would love to get your views on as part of the discussion today. One is about how the ICP can champion this agenda. And also if there's interest, or to start a discussion about if there's interest in forming a working group within the ICP to think about what these opportunities mean and how they can help the ICP to deliver on its aims and on your shared vision. And I think I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I mean, I've again a chance to have a look at the paper and the role of anchor institutions. When we look at the big employers across Dorset, NHS is number 1, and the 2 local authorities come are second after that. So major anchor institutions who have a role to play in the community. Obviously, others around the table have the opportunity to also participate in the opportunity. You look like you were going to say something there.
Well, we're just looking at 6 actions, 6 opportunities, sorry, in terms of that. I mean, pay is an interesting one, isn't it, around the real living wage. So we're part, and I think BCP are also the part of the national joint negotiation on pay. I think the aspiration is that this financial year we're about to enter, so from April 2024, the minimum salary will be above the real living wage, which is currently set at £12, I think, for the South West. We're currently not at that point now. We're above the national living wage, which has just gone up to £11.44, as people are aware. The challenge for us as a local government employer in terms of adopting the real living wage is we move out of sync with when they set it, because they'll change it again in November, and then we didn't do our pay negotiator. So potentially we're all slightly behind. But I think the work over the last couple of years, where certainly the lower scale pay salaries have gone up by an average of about 9.4%, because they paid a lump, a chunk rather than a percentage. So we've had 2 years where everybody's had as a minimum £1,995 applied. It means that we should be ahead of the real living wage foundation level. So that commitment is, I suppose, I'm wording it differently because we will remain part of the national joint commitment, but it'll be for a new council, perhaps post the election in May, to think about whether it wants to take any different approach. Certainly the workforce piece, really keen. I'm part of the national NHS steerco around schemes for care leavers, both within the NHS, and obviously would be a strong advocate for that with the councils. Absolutely, and we're picking that up. And I've just taken on lead for apprenticeships within the council. I mean, I can't see anything in there that we wouldn't necessarily go forwards and support either indirectly or directly.
Okay, so the principles. I can see I've got Siobhan on the screen who put her hand up earlier, and Nick, and then I'll come back to you, Paul, if that's okay. Siobhan?
Yeah, I think this is quite an opportunity really for us, isn't it? Especially when you look at the baseline, because you can see there's variation across the piece, and there's probably quite an opportunity here for us to work differently. I was involved in the anchor work in London, and one of the first trusts to bring in the London living wage at the time. And actually what I learned from that was that doing this across a group of trusts and a group of other providers, you actually learn a lot about how you can do it in a very positive way. It becomes quite a catalyst for change. And we did a similar sort of baseline in my previous organisation. So I just think there is work for us to do. It was interesting when I shared this across the team here at UHD, there was very limited awareness of this piece of work, which is a reflection in itself. So I actually would support there being a group that came together that actually looked at how we could do this probably differently in Dorset, because I think it can become a vehicle for the change that we want to see, and I think it could be very valuable.
Thank you, Siobhan. Nick Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm hugely supportive of the anchor work. I think Paul and Rupert have done a really good job pulling something together, and at times have sort of struggled to get engagement. So I think there's something for all of us about how we ensure our organisations are really committed and bought into this, because like Siobhan, I think if we come together on this, if we can do the same things in the same way and really focus our attention on some of these big things, then the difference I think we can make to the health and well-being of the populations of Dorset is really significant. And there were sort of references earlier about the purpose of the ICP and where we spent our attention and where we spent our time. And I would say, if we don't spend our time on this, then I'm not sure what we should really be spending our time on, because this is absolutely aligned to the ICS 4 aims. And I think for me, and I sort of put a real kind of suggestion out here, I think we need to make a really public commitment as an ICP, as a set of organisations within Dorset, around our ambitions here. And I appreciate there's some sort of sensitivity about what we can commit to publicly, etc. But I think we could do something really, really powerful to signal our intent and our ambition around this agenda based around those 6 areas. And I think that would be a really, really powerful thing to coalesce around. And I think it would give the ICP a real purpose as well.
Thank you, Nick. That's better. I like the idea of a vehicle for the change we want to see. I think that is a very good way of Siobhan's put together.
Nice to see you, Nick. Hello. It's been a while. So the idea of a working, I'm going to change the language a bit to make it sound more fun. Working party. Putting together some of the spirit of Siobhan and Nick's comments, and from earlier on, I think I took a real thing, a phrase came to mind, I think, when Neil was speaking: you get what you focus on. So how about we have a working party where a subset of you, and I really think it needs to be you, not delegating it down to others in the organisation. I really would welcome it being people from this board to work with us for a short period of time to look at those 6 recommendations and agree some targets that could then form an item that you regularly come back to in board meetings by way of monitoring to give that focus.
I like the idea of targets. I love the concept of an audit, but I can see why people might feel that setting targets is possibly the better approach.
Yeah, obviously, predictable. I was going to say actually, news of the education provider as well, that the end to the system, and I think that's quite a big work in terms of the civic commission agenda. And I'm sure, and obviously I'm here as an HE rep on this group, and I know BU would be supportive, etc. across the piece. I think so I can't set their targets for them. Well, I could try, but I don't think they'll listen to me. But I think there's something about actually, if we really mean all the Dorset anchor institutions, let's give it and it probably does need to be broader potentially than some of the people in this room. It's that actually not everybody can speak for that, but actually I think there is a will. And a lot of these things we measure already as universities, because there's various reports that we provide that to our business engagement, etc.
And that is my feeling, is a lot of this stuff, as you say, is already measured. People know we're not sharing it. We're not actually sharing what that looks like and how we can actually then have plans to move it forward. David, you're looking thoughtful.
Well, I was just thinking, we haven't spent, the NHS certainly, I can only speak for the NHS really, haven't spent a lot of conscious time in this space. So you sound like you do quite a lot.
We'll have to give an annual return on it. So,
whereas we haven't yet been inclined to do that. So it's probably, we could probably learn a lot from you, but I think we need to give it the emphasis and get it going.
Nick was leading on it for some time.
Yeah. I'm sure. And Nick's already championed the idea of setting some targets for this and getting going. I think that will pull us in that right direction.
Last comment from John.
Just an observation, given what you were saying about audit and the difficulty of getting data. I was just wondering whether there is almost a 2-step in this, given, again, as we were saying about the data that is there that we don't necessarily have into yet. There is I wonder if there's something about getting a sense of the level of commitment as step one and people's involvement or capacity. So I'm sitting here as BCS rep. We have no capacity to do this work, but we do it for a day job. So all the stuff about environmental impact and commissioning locally and things like that, that's the nature of the BCS. So there's something about capturing the quality of certain parts of our work or our systems that automatically would be consistent with this kind of approach and this way of working, which is saying, yes, we have this as part of our mechanism and opportunity. But then I think there's a second question about how or whether there's capacity or what the system looks like in terms of gathering the data part of that. So the commitment, you know, that Matt's mentioned and others to pay or to conditioning and things like that, one thing, or the social value acts and things like that. How much capacity we have to say that amounts to X amount of money or this number of cases and so on, I think is a different question. But I think there's value in both of those, is what I would suggest. The aspiration and the possibility, as well as the delivery. And then maybe that makes us think a bit more carefully about how we measure stuff as well, which is interesting. Yeah, bit of a thorny question.
Given the time, I know I'm a minute over already. Paul, Rupert, thank you so very much for bringing this to the table. I think what you've heard is commitment. You've got some names in the frame, and you know, I think we've got a next step there as to how we can take this forward. Are you content? I'm not looking at Paul's face. He's not looking quite.
Poker skill. I think so. Rupert and I will compare notes, and I think there's a number of you have spoken today that we'll come back to.
I think that's what we need to do. You want to get people together in a room. You know, let's help organise that to make sure it really happens. That you get that wider representation that Leslie talks about to make sure that.
So again, from universities, it would be our knowledge exchange leads would sit on all of this information. It would have those, you know, the metrics that John's, you know, those are all available. They may not fit exactly, but they're already there.
I mean, a written ask might actually be a good place to start with some of these things as well. So, you know, let's write out to people, see what they've already got, and then work. We've got something to work upon. As far as we have no items for consent on the agenda, and no additional standing items, and no questions from the public. Any other business is always a good one to ask at this point in time when we're a minute over. I think the key messages from the meeting, as I see it, is as we've all agreed that we do need to work together. A lot of stuff is happening. We've got to think differently. We've got to come up with ways of making these things happen. We've got some great examples of things that are already working. Let's use those and amplify them and see if we can really get behind it. It's so great to have that commitment. I think you know, as a system that we are seeing the benefit of working together. Point out that the next meeting is actually going to be at Poole Hospital, sorry, sort of in Poole, Dorset. What's the parking like there?
Terrible. Please cycle or walk.
I'm not cycling.
Or get the train.
Yeah, the train.
Okay, well, thank you. But just to note, the next meeting, 23rd.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
We need to move those again.
Yes.
Don't we? Yeah, and we keep saying, yes, we do. But
Yeah.
try and get to